Chapter 304. This kid is a little annoying. Lu Tianyi felt a little awkward. Who was he? Many people tried to get on his good side, and he'd taken the initiative to shake hands with Lin Yi. Now that he was being ignored, he felt a little embarrassed. But if Lin Yi really was as miraculous as Guan Xiumin said, then it was normal for a miracle doctor to put on airs. He was someone many people wanted to get on his good side, after all. It was normal that he didn't like him. Uncle, don't get tricked by him. I know this kid. He's not a miracle doctor. Chen Tian was getting angry at his uncle's respect for Lin Yi. He's Sun Jingyi's boyfriend. A liar. Chen Tian found it hard to connect the title of miracle doctor with Lin Yi. The kid didn't look like a miracle doctor at all, and he'd asked Sun Jingyi about what Lin Yi did for a living. Sun Jingyi tried her best to cover it up, but Chen Tian still got the gist of it. The kid didn't have a proper job and was unemployed. Otherwise, with Sun Jingyi's personality, there was no way she wouldn't brag about her boyfriend's good points. If Lin Yi really was a miracle doctor, Sun Jingyi would have used this to attack him already. Why would she hide it? This was why Chen Tian dared to make things difficult for Lin Yi. As far as he was concerned, Lin Yi was no miracle doctor. These people must have been tricked by Lin Yi. Lu Tianyi, Huiru, and Guan Xiumin all looked at Lin Yi, surprised. Fine, I'm a liar. What no one expected was for Lin Yi to admit it. Since there are people who don't want to see me, then I'll take my leave. Grandpa Guan, I'll come visit again. With that, Lin Yi stood up and prepared to leave. What a joke. Lin Yi didn't know the Lius anything. He only treated Elder Lu because of Guan Xiumin, and since they called him a liar, Lin Yi couldn't be bothered to explain himself. I'm too lazy to treat you if you call me a liar. Go look wherever you want. We'll meet again. Haze. Guan Xiumin sighed. He wasn't angry at Lin Yi's actions, but he didn't like Chen Tian's behavior. He didn't know what relationship this kid had with Lu Tianyi. Why did he bring him here to embarrass himself? Great. Now that you've pissed him off, he won't treat your old man anymore. What are you going to do now? In terms of age, Chen Tian was a few years older than Lin Yi, but in Xiumin's eyes, Chen Tian was just a kid. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was his old friend, his teacher. Lin Yi walked towards the entrance of the villa without any hesitation. Guan Xiumin didn't stop him. Lu Tianyi was stunned for a moment, but then he panicked. They had finally found Lin Yi. How could they let him go just like that? Lu Tianyi couldn't care less about his identity. He stepped forward and grabbed Lin Yi. Little magic doctor, please wait. Why should I stay? Lin Yi pursed his lips. What if someone calls me a liar? Huh? Lu Tianyi slapped Huiru's face. He may be Chen Tian's uncle, but Chen Tian was still a member of House Wu and a rising star of the younger generation at that. He couldn't discipline him directly, so he vented his anger on his wife, who was also a Wu. It was natural for a man to discipline his wife. Even if the Wu family knew about it, they wouldn't say anything. After Wu Huiru married into the Lu family, she would be a member of the Lu family. Look at your nephew. What did you do? What did you do? Tianyi roared, frustrated. You're the perfect example of a loving aunt ruining her nephew. Huiru was stunned by Tianyi's sudden slap, but she realized that she shouldn't have brought Chintan with her when she regained her composure. She'd pissed off the little miracle doctor, and if the brothers of House Lu found out about it, they'd all divorce her as their sister-in-law. Pa! Huiru slapped Chintian's face. What nonsense are you talking about? If you keep this up, I'll call my brother and tell you to go home. Chen Tian didn't dare say anything after being slapped by his aunt. There were many rules in a big family, and it was natural for the elders to discipline the younger ones. Chen Tian lowered his head and focused all his hatred on Lin Yi. As far as he was concerned, all of this was because of Lin Yi. Little magic doctor, you see. Lu Tianyi had already made his stance as he looked at Lin Yi with pleading eyes. Yes, pleading. Curing his father's illness was his biggest wish. Oh, this kid's a bit annoying. I don't want to see him anymore. Lin Yi glanced at Chen Tian. Huiru, why aren't you taking Chen Tian out? Lu Tianyi glared at Huiru. Why was she so insensible? You can see that the little magic doctor hates her nephew. Why don't you make him disappear from the doctor's sight? Oh, okay. Huiru pushed Chen Tian. Tian, let's go out first. Chen Tian humphed, unsatisfied. He looked at Lin Yi viciously and mouthed, just you wait. before leaving the villa with Huiru. Lin, you didn't even look at Chintian. Who cared what he said? There were many people who wanted to humiliate him, but none of them got what they wanted. Of course, that was unless his old man could torture him to the point where he couldn't do anything about it. Little divine doctor, that disappointing kid has already been driven out by me. Can you treat my father now? Lu Qianni asked carefully as he looked at Lin Yi. Did I say I'm going to treat your father? Lin Yi looked at Lu Qianni. Was there something wrong with this guy's head? What did he say he was going to treat his father? That's... Tianni's face froze as he groaned inwardly. Indeed, Lin Yi never promised to treat his father. He only said he hated Chintian. Little magic doctor, can you please take a look at my father? Previously, if my nephew had offended you, I apologize on his behalf. It wasn't easy to make Lu Qianni humble himself like this, but he really did put all his hopes on Lin Yi. After seeing Lin Yi's miraculous skills with his own eyes, plus Xu Amin's respect for Lin Yi, Lu Qianni didn't doubt that Lin Yi was the real deal. If it were anyone else, even a miracle doctor, Lu Qianni wouldn't act like this. But Lu Qianni didn't dare underestimate this young man who was called a specialist by Guan Xu Amin and Miracle Dr. Guan, especially with Lin Yi's temper. It was normal for powerful people to have a temper, and Lu Qianni understood that. He was sure that Lin Yi was a master. Chapter 305. A rip-off. The crowd went into an uproar at Lin Yi's words. Even Guan Xu Amin was staring at Lin Yi in shock. Elder Lu could live for another 8 to 10 years if he could keep his condition under control, but that was under the condition that the angina wouldn't act up again. An old man at Jinhu's age would be at the end of his rope after another 8 to 10 years. Even Hua Tuo himself wouldn't be able to change his fate. And this, how could it be said that even if he was cured, it would all be for naught? Sickness and death were part and parcel of human nature. It was normal for descendants to die 8 to 10 years later. Ha ha! Young man, you're right. In another 8 to 10 years, I'll be buried. That's only natural. However, if you can let this old man not be tormented by illness in these few years, this old man will be eternally grateful. Jinhu was no longer afraid of death at his age, and Lin Yi wasn't wrong. Most importantly, Jinhu knew very well that this daughter-in-law of his had offended Lin Yi from the start, and her nephew had offended Lin Yi as well. Would he still be able to treat him? Treat? For your sake, I'll reluctantly do it, but there'll be a fee. The only person Lin Yi had a good impression of was Elder Lu. No matter what, the old man knew how to repay kindness. He'd even invited Lin Yi to Yinjing a while back, so Lin Yi had a good impression of him. Still, Lin Yi wasn't in a good mood if he agreed to treat just like that. So he came up with a compromise. A fee? Not a problem. Lu Qianni nodded quickly after hearing Lin Yi's terms. It was only right and proper to pay for treatment, so Lu Qianni had no objections. Excuse me, young miracle doctor. How much does it cost? 10 million a year. Lin Yi said. It takes a year to cure, but 10 million. All right, no problem. Lu Qianni hesitated for a moment, but he still nodded. Although 10 million was not a small number, it was nothing compared to his father's health. Are you sick? Lin Yi frowned after listening to Lu Qianni's words. I said 10 million a year, not a total of 10 million. Lu Qianni was stunned, and his heart was burning with anger. He also guessed that Lin Yi might be taking advantage of his misfortune, but there was nothing he could do. He had directly offended Lin Yi, and it was almost impossible to make Lin Yi relent. He didn't dare to show his dissatisfaction, because if he did, Lin Yi might not treat him even if he offered money. Then, how much does it cost? Didn't I just say it? He can still live for 8 to 10 years. Don't you know how to calculate it yourself? Lin Yi looked at Lu Qianni with disdain. Then, isn't that 80 million? Lu Qianni was shocked. This was really a large number. 80 million? Lin Yi couldn't help but be amused. Well, if you want your old man to suddenly get sick after 8 years, then 80 million. Anyway, if he doesn't die after 8 years, he will definitely die when the disease breaks out. This? Lu Qianni couldn't help but smile bitterly after listening to Lin Yi's words. Lin Yi seems to want 100 million from me. If it's 100 million, then it's better to say it clearly. It seems that I am reluctant to spend money on my father. He can't guarantee that his father can only live for 8 years. According to what Lenny said, 80 million is only for 8 years. If he suddenly dies after 8 years, then he is not a filial son. Guan Shuimin also understood at this moment, and his expression was a little strange. He just told Lin that there is no startup capital, and now the startup capital is here. Lin, he really extorted a lot of money. Although Guan Shuimin knew that Lin, he was just using this as a pretext to make a fuss, who asked the Liu family to offend Lin Yi. Guan Shuimin didn't say anything. In this situation, it was not appropriate for him to interrupt. Elder Guan, you see, Liu Tianyi was a little helpless. If it was 10 million, he could take it out immediately, but if it was 100 million, he also had a plan. Isn't it a little too much? Therefore, he wanted Guan Shuimin to help him. Mr. Liu, you really overestimate me. Guan Shuimin shook his head. My relationship with Lin, he can only be regarded as a teacher and a friend. I can't interfere with him or anything. A teacher and a friend? That's half a teacher, if you ask. Tianyi paused a little helplessly. I'll be honest with you. House Liu is a big house, but it'd be hard for us to take out 100 million in cash. What would you ask your teacher to do? Guan Shuimin smiled bitterly. Liu Tianyi was stunned, not understanding what Guan Shuimin was saying. Lily is half a teacher to me. Guan Shuimin didn't feel embarrassed at all. Shuimin didn't feel embarrassed at all. He was a man of honor, and he respected Lin Yi's medical skills. He wouldn't hide anything just because he was afraid of losing face. What? Liu Tianyi was shocked and looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. Guan Shuimin actually said that Lin Yi is his teacher? How? How is that possible? However, Liu Tianyi was a person who had seen the world, and he immediately understood. Yes, even Guan Shuimin couldn't do anything about his father's illness. So how could his student do anything? The only possibility was that Lin Yi was better than Guan Shuimin. That's all I have to say. Guan Shuimin waved his hand. I've already introduced Lil Yi to you, and it's up to you whether you want to treat him or not. But don't worry, even if you don't take out the 100 million, I will still do my best. If possible, I will ask Lily for help. 100 million, okay. No problem. Having figured out the relationship between Lin Yi and Guan Shuimin, Liu Tianyi agreed without hesitation. Although it was difficult for the Liu family to take out 100 million in cash, they could sell off some of their stocks in real estate to get the amount. As the core figure of the Liu family, his father couldn't be harmed. As long as his father was healthy and alive, the Liu family had hope. All right, call me when you have the money ready. Lenny nodded and got straight to the point. You can find me if you want to talk to Grandpa Guan. I'll be going now, it's getting late. All right, Miracle Dr. Lin, do you need me to send you off? Liu Tianyi had already thrown caution to the wind. It was only 100 million, right? Compared to his father's health, it really wasn't much. House Liu was different from other rising houses, and the reason why they were doing so well was because of Liu Zhenhu's connections and reputation. Liu Tianyi wanted to send Lin Yi off because he wanted to know where Lin Yi lived. He wasn't worried about the 100 million anymore. He was worried that Lin Yi would go back on his word. Chapter 306. Parting on bad terms, all right. Shuimin nodded. Be careful on the road. You've been drinking, so if you're driving, I've been awake for a while now. Do I look drunk to you, Grandpa Guan? Lin Yi smiled. Drinking? Lin Yi rarely got drunk. Ever since he started practicing the art of dragon mastery, Lin Yi's tolerance for alcohol had increased as well. The old man at home often dragged Lin Yi to drink with him, but it was always old Lin who was completely drunk after the drinks, while Lin Yi was completely fine. Old Lin was quite annoyed by this. Drinking with someone who couldn't get drunk wasn't fun at all. In the end, old Lin stopped allowing Lin Yi to drink, telling him to drink plain water instead. The reason was simple. He thought Lin Yi was wasting alcohol, and since drinking was the same as drinking water, he might as well drink water instead. Shuimin nodded. Lin Yi didn't look drunk at all. What he'd done to House Liu just now was enough to make them lose their temper. After Lin Yi left, Lu Tianyi let out a long sigh and smiled bitterly at Xiumin. Elder Guan, I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused. After all, Lu Tianyi had come to Xiumin for treatment. Now that he'd switched to Lin Yi, it was a little disrespectful. While Lin Yi had been introduced by Xiumin, Lu Tianyi still had to explain himself. He'd been too polite to Lin Yi earlier, and he was worried that Xiumin might have some ulterior motives. Lin Yi was a miracle doctor, but so was Xiumin. Lu Tianyi didn't want to offend him. Xiumin waved his hand. I don't have the ability, but I hope my patient can get better. Did you guys know Lin Yi before? He's the one who saved my father's life I told you about last time. Lu Tianyi explained. So, this is why I believe that he can cure my father's illness. All right, Heaven Wings. Zhenhu spoke up at this time. When you raise money, give Professor Guan an extra 2 million. Okay, Dad. Lu Tianyi quickly nodded. Forget about my consultation fee. I didn't cure your illness. Guan Xiumin waved his hand and was about to refuse. No matter what, you've helped me for so many days. You should give me the money. Zhenhu said. In his eyes, Xiumin's referral fee was acceptable. All right then, I'll accept it. Xiumin thought about it. He'd just gotten 100 million from Lin Yi, but he'd open a company and might need more money. 2 million was good enough, and so he accepted the money. After a few more words, Lu Tianyi stood up and left. It was getting late, and Xiumin seemed to have drunk quite a bit. He didn't want to disturb his rest. On the way back, Huiru heard that Lin Yi had asked for 100 million. She was shocked. House Wu was a powerful house, but they were still one of those hidden houses that specialized in ancient martial arts. They didn't have many industries, and 100 million was enough to last them for a few years. Uncle, that Lin Yi is a liar. He's Sun Jingyi's boyfriend. How could he be a miracle doctor? Don't let him trick you. Chen Tian was pissed off at Lin Yi's demand. If he let Lin Yi get 100 million, how was he going to compete with Lin Yi? Sun Jingyi wouldn't even look at him in the eye when the time came. And the funny thing was that this was all caused by his uncle's family. Wu Chen, what are you talking about? What do you know? Shut up. Lu Tianyi was angry at his nephew for being so immature. Don't you think you've caused enough trouble? You've already offended Miracle Dr. Lin. Do you want to kill your grandpa, Lu? Oomph. Uncle, I'm doing this for your own good. If you don't want to listen, then forget it. I won't bother you anymore. Shin Tian's stubborn young master's temper flared up. He was the most promising of the younger generation in House Wu, the one who had the highest chance of reaching Mystic and Iron Fist arts, so he was respected everywhere in the house. He had never been humiliated like this before. Tian, don't be rash. Apologize to your uncle. Huiru was panicking and quickly pulled Shin Tian's hand. Apologize? Oomph. Shin Tian smiled coldly. Aunt, since Uncle looks down on House Wu, then forget it. Do you want to come back with me, or stay here? Tian, stop it. Huiru didn't expect Shan Tian to be this angry. All right, Aunt, since you're already a part of House Lu, I won't force you. Shin Tian's eyes flashed with determination. Stop the car. I'm getting off. Lu Tianyi, naturally, wouldn't let Shin Tian do as he pleased. He stopped the car by the roadside and smiled coldly. Since this Wu kid didn't know what was good for him, then he shouldn't blame him for being ruthless. Other things were fine, but his father's illness was involved. He wouldn't be nice to Shin Tian. House Wu, even if he was from House Wu, he was just a junior. How dare he be so arrogant in front of him? Lu Tianyi was furious. Huiru, you're going back with him? I won't be messing around with Tian anymore. Huiru sighed helplessly. She knew that from today onwards, there would be a rift between House Wu and House Lu. But now that she was a daughter-in-law of House Lu, she had to stand on House Lu's side. This was the foundation of being a wife. She'd be laughed at if she messed around with House Wu. She wanted to mediate, but she didn't know how. It was normal for Chen Tian to be angry, but Lin Yi was Sun Jingyi's boyfriend. That alone was enough for Chen Tian to not be nice to him. But Lin Yi was someone who could save his father-in-law, and this wasn't going to be easy to mediate. Huiru, go, and send him off. He's your nephew. After all, Zhenhu, who hadn't spoken until now, spoke up. He didn't want to say anything about House Wu's business. As the head of House Lu, he couldn't interfere with House Wu's business. What happened to House Wu's nephew would be handled by House Wu, and it wasn't up to others to say anything. Yes, Dad. Huira nodded and sent Qin Tian off the car. She whispered after 2 steps, Tian, don't do anything rash. That Lin Yi's really good at medicine. Aunt, you're helping him too? Qin Tian humphed unhappily. If you want to deal with him, at least wait until he heals my father-in-law's illness. To be honest, I'm really pissed off that he's asking for so much. If you can get that 100 million back for me, I'm sure Uncle would be happy to see it too, Huiru said softly. Chapter 307. Peng Zhan's dilemma. Huiru, on the other hand, was a very selfish woman. As far as she was concerned, letting a little-known doctor like Lin Yi treat her illness was already giving him a lot of face. If he were to really be cured, wouldn't there be countless rich people coming to him for treatment once he was promoted to the upper class? How much money would he have then? Asking for 100 million right now was practically extortion. Since when had House Lu ever been taken advantage of like this? Even if he was a miracle doctor, a few million would be the most he'd get. Fine then. Since you dare ask for it, you'd have to be able to keep it first. Of course, Tianyi would have exploded if he'd known how selfish and short-sighted his wife was. 100 million wasn't a small amount, but it was worth it to gain the friendship of a miracle doctor just like that. It was worth it. Wouldn't there be a day when you get old and sick? Would you still be begging Lin Yi then? What a wastrel with water in her head. But evidently, Lu Tianyi didn't know that yet, and it was too late for him to stop Qin Tian from going against Lin Yi. Peng Zhan was very pissed today. Gubong was calling for a board meeting to elect a new chairman. Peng Zhan's heart turned cold at the thought of Gubong and Guangbu's relationship yesterday. It was the first time he'd felt so powerless. He couldn't control the situation anymore. Peng Zhan was still full of confidence before the board meeting yesterday, confident that he'd be able to get rid of the parasite in the company, slowly weakening Gubong's power and eventually kicking him out of the company. But now, things weren't what he'd expected. The second and third largest shareholders of the company had formed an alliance, and their shares had already exceeded his. He wouldn't be able to handle them if they would make things difficult for him in the board meeting. Since when had the company become like this? The company his father founded was in his hands, and he was going to hand it over to someone else? Peng Zhan hadn't told his father about the company all this time. He didn't want the company to disturb him now that his father had retired. Besides, the company wasn't a big deal to Peng Zhan. As long as he held on to the shares, he was confident that he'd be able to deal with some of the shareholders who were a little greedy and selfish. But Peng Zhan hadn't expected the shareholders to unite. He was at his wit's end. Gubong had already gone to contact the other board members with Guangbu, and there was no chance of reconciliation at all. Perhaps he wouldn't be the chairman of the company anymore in a few days. Left with no other choice, Peng Zhan dialed up his father's number. He didn't want to disturb his father, but he had no choice but to tell Elder Chu about the company's situation at this critical juncture. Elder Chu listened to Peng Zhan's words quietly, not interrupting him. He waited for him to finish, remaining silent for a while. Dad, look. Peng Zhan felt exhausted. A third of the board had been roped in by Gubong, and even he, the chairman, couldn't stop this. Since Gubong was calling for this meeting, it meant that he had the confidence to replace him as the chairman. Actually, I have long seen the problem with the company's board of directors. Elder Chu's voice was calm. Peng Zhan, you're too kind and kind-hearted. That's a good point, but you have to understand that the business world is like a battlefield. Being kind to your enemy is being cruel to yourself. Everyone has greed and selfishness, and it's only natural that the board of directors would ally together to usurp power. Then you mean? Peng Zhan paused. His father didn't seem to want to get involved in this anymore. Go find Lin Yi. Elder Chu sighed softly. Perhaps he's the only one who can help you in this situation. Him? Peng Zhan was surprised. Dad, you're asking to come. Don't you mean for him and Yao Yao? Haha, he might have a way. Elder Chu didn't say it out loud, only smiling. I understand, Dad. Peng Zhan hung up the phone. He didn't know why his father wanted him to go find Lin Yi, but he couldn't understand what Lin Yi could do in a situation like this. Lin Yi wasn't a shareholder of the company, and he didn't have any shares in his hands. Lin, he wouldn't be able to interfere with the company's board of directors meeting. But since Elder Chu had asked him to look for Lin Yi, Peng Zhan could only give a try. Peng Zhan really didn't expect that a business tycoon like him would fall into the trap of his father's old friend's son. Had he really been too kind? Perhaps his father was right. If he'd acted decisively when he'd first discovered the problem, perhaps this wouldn't have happened today. Some of the shareholders would have criticized him for not caring about his father's feelings, but it was still better than being at his wit's end. After some hesitation, Peng Zhan turned to Li Fu. Go to Yao Yao's villa. Yes, Mr. Chu. Faubert sighed. Mr. Chu, don't be too hasty. If Elder Chu said that Lin Yi has a way, then he should have a way. I hope so. Peng Zhan nodded. Lin Yi parked the car in front of Meng Yao's villa and saw a Bentley turn in behind him. It was Faubert's car. Lin Yi got out of the car, but didn't enter the villa. He waited for Faubert's car to park, and Peng Zhan got out of the car. Peng Zhan didn't expect Lin Yi to just come back. He looked at the van Lin Yi drove, surprised. Your car? Oh, I helped Lingshan catch a fugitive. That Heibao. Lin Yi didn't hide the truth. It's Heibao's. I got the license plate from Lingshan this afternoon. Peng Zhan nodded. He didn't expect Lin to have built up his own network in Songshan without anyone noticing. The fact that he was able to get the car from Lingshan meant that the two had a close relationship. Uncle Chu has something to discuss with you, Peng Zhan said with a pat on Lin Yi's shoulder. He didn't want to waste time on the car. Oh, all right, let's talk inside. Lin Yi said as he locked the door. Peng Zhan hesitated. Why don't you get in my car? Lin Yi paused, but understood immediately. He nodded. Okay. Chapter 308. Leave it to Melon. He followed Peng Zhan into the Bentley, who lit up a cigarette and handed one to Lin Yi. Lin Yi waved his hand. I'm not addicted. I don't like smoking. Peng Zhan didn't mind as he passed it to Faubert casually. Uncle Chu's in some trouble. Peng Zhan didn't know why his old man wanted him to go look for Lin Yi, but he couldn't understand why Lin Yi would care about company matters other than protecting Meng Yao. Lin Yi didn't have any experience in this, did he? It's about the company, isn't it? Lin Yi didn't wait for Peng Zhan to finish, guessing that the only thing Peng Zhan was worried about right now was the company's business. Yes, it's about the company. Peng Zhan nodded, not hiding anything. He wasn't going to hide anything since he was looking for help. The second and third largest shareholders of the company have teamed up, and all the board members who are on good terms with them are on their side. They're planning to hold a board meeting to elect a new chairman. Peng Zhan nodded, not hiding anything. Lin Yi waved his hand. Uncle Chu, you don't have to go into the details. I don't know much about company operations, but there's one thing I want to know right now. Will these two be a threat to your position in the company? Yes, they've been in the company for years, and they have a certain amount of connections. Some of the board members are on good terms with them, and I'd lose for sure if they teamed up. Peng Zhan said. Lin Yi nodded, furrowing his eyebrows as he fell into deep thought. Peng Zhan didn't disturb Lin Yi, since he'd never come into contact with company matters before. He'd need some time to digest what he'd just heard. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi asked a strange question all of a sudden. The second and third largest shareholders you mentioned, what's their relationship like before? Before, Peng Zhan paused, a little angry. From what I've seen before, their relationship wasn't that good. You know that the three major shareholders of the company, myself included, have a certain amount of power in the board of directors. There's no such thing as someone fawning over someone else. So from what I've seen, their relationship has always been tense. But I don't know why, but at the board meeting on Sunday, the two of them actually teamed up. This is what caught me off guard. It turns out that the two of them have been colluding with each other. Lin Yi laughed. Uncle Chu, you're too involved. The person involved can't see clearly. Peng Zhan paused. Maybe they didn't collude with each other long ago, but only temporarily? Lin Yi shrugged and continued. Of course, this is just my guess. There's definitely something fishy going on. I think there's definitely a secret that no one knows about. Peng Zhan nodded. You're right, but it doesn't matter when they started working together. What's more important is how do I deal with them working together? Why deal with them? Lin Yi smiled. Uncle Chu, haven't you thought about splitting them up? making them fight amongst themselves, or even inciting them to betray you. Lin, he hadn't run a company before, but the most common way to deal with his enemies was to divide and destroy them, or to incite internal strife and let them kill each other first. Of course, instigating defection was also a good way. Oh, Peng Zhan paused. He'd been thinking about how to deal with Jin Gubong and Xie Guangbua's team. He'd never thought about splitting them up, inciting them to betray him, or inciting them to fight amongst themselves. Tell me about these two shareholders. Who's the leader? Lin asked. Jin Gubong and Xie Guangbua are the two major shareholders. Jin Gubong's the one I've been trying to deal with. He's the reason why Yao Yao was attacked a couple of times. I was actually planning on using the theme park incident to cause trouble for Jin Gubong during the board meeting on Sunday, but Xie Guangbua jumped out of nowhere. With that, Peng Zhan explained the situation to Lin. Old Xie doesn't speak or speak much, nor does he fight for power. Who knew that he'd be working with Jin Gubong this time? Peng Zhan's introduction. Lin, he had a better understanding of the two shareholders of the company. This Jin Gubong was the leader this time, and getting him to defect was basically impossible. This Xie Guangbua that Peng Zhan was talking about was the key to solving this problem. Just as Peng Zhan had said, Xie Guangbua's behavior was completely different from his usual self on Sunday. There had to be something fishy going on, so Lin decided to start with this person. All right, if that's the case, leave this to me, Uncle Chu. I'll take care of it. Lin nodded. Where does Xie Guangbua live? Xie Guangbua? You're not planning on killing people and robbing them, are you? Peng Zhan paused as he looked at Lin worriedly. Don't worry, I won't kill Xie Guangbua. Lin gave Peng Zhan a reassuring smile. Killing him is the only way to solve the problem once and for all, but according to what you said earlier, I'd rather kill Jin Gubong than Xie Guangbua. Since I've set my sights on Xie Guangbua, I can't do something like that. Naturally, it wasn't that Lin hadn't thought of killing Jin Gubong, but he didn't want to bring unnecessary trouble to Peng Zhan. Jin Gubong, no matter what, he was still the second largest shareholder of Peng Zhan Industries. The death of a small fry wouldn't be a big deal, but the death of a shareholder would definitely attract attention. Lin still wanted to live a peaceful life in Songshan, so he didn't want to cause any trouble for now. That's good. Peng Zhan nodded. Xie Guangbua's house is in the Qianhua Waterfront District, in the private villa, Area F. The 6th villa is his house. I understand, leave it to me. Lin said, I'll go talk to him now. Be careful. Peng Zhan didn't know if he was doing the right thing by asking Lin for help, but since the old man had said so, Peng Zhan had to give a try. Xie Guangbua isn't a normal person, either. He has a bodyguard of his own, a master. Also, Lin narrowed his eyes as he looked at Faubert involuntarily. Lin had mentioned a golden class master before, and Faubert's expression had been a little different back then. Could it be that his suspicions were correct? That Faubert was a master amongst masters. Chapter 309. Chapter 309. How did you get in? Lin thought that it was quite possible. If Faubert really was Peng Zhan's bodyguard, then he had to be a physical practitioner, just like Wu Qintian. While he was a practitioner, he didn't have any qi in his body because he trained in physical arts. Lin, he wouldn't be able to sense the qi in his body, nor would he be able to tell what level he was at. As a result, Faubert was a little mysterious in Lin Yi's eyes. Being able to stay by Peng Zhan's side for so many years meant that a kid like Wu Qintian couldn't be compared to Faubert. Just how strong was he? Lin didn't think that Faubert wasn't only responsible for Peng Zhan's safety, but he also had to take care of Meng Yao and Yushu's safety when they went to school. Lin didn't know if anyone had tried to harm Meng Yao or not, but judging from the fact that Meng Yao and Yushu were still alive, Faubert had to be pretty strong. Li Fu seemed to have sensed Lin Yi's gaze on his back. After a moment of silence, he spoke up. You're right, I'm Mr. Chu's guard. There's a master beside Mr. Xie who's no weaker than me, but I'm a physical practitioner now, and he's a spiritual practitioner. Now, Lin Yi's interest was piqued by Faubert's words. What did this now mean? He used to practice the inner chi method, but why didn't he feel anything at all? I'll be careful. Lin Yi didn't really mind. A master, huh? He was a master himself. With that, Lin Yi got out of the car and prepared to drive his van to Guangbua. There was no reason for Lin Yi to wait now that he knew what the problem was. Wait, Yi, your van isn't going to be discovered, is it? Peng Zhan asked as he looked at Lin Yi's van. Ha, Uncle Chu, what do you think I'm going to do? Lin Yi used the key to open the car door and prepared to get in. I'm going to talk to Xie Guangbua face to face. I'm not afraid of him recognizing me. I see. Peng Zhan nodded. Why don't you drive Yao Yao's car? The people living in that district are all rich. Your car might be stopped at the entrance of the district. Okay, then I will drive Little Shu's beetle. Since I have the key, I don't need to bother Yao Yao anymore. Lin Yi nodded, locked his broken van, and went to the garage to get the car. Qianhua Waterfront District was one of the most luxurious districts in Songshan. This place was known as the symbol of Songshan's nobility. Every household here had a duplex layout, and there were even independent villas. Basically, every household had a starting price of 10 million, and a villa could be sold for more than 30 million. The people who could live here were either wealthy or respectable, and this Lead River Shore was known as Songshan's wealthy district. Although not all rich people lived here, those who lived here were definitely rich people. Peng Zhan didn't buy a house here because his current place was even more luxurious than this. As the third largest shareholder of Peng Zhan Industries, one of the top 500 companies in the country, it wasn't surprising that Guangbua had a villa here. Besides, this Lead River Shore project was developed by Peng Zhan Industries. The management of Lead River Shore was very strict. Cars from outside were stopped at the entrance of the district. Only cars with a high enough grade would be let through, or cars with the district pass would be let through after it was confirmed that they were residents of the district. Lin Yi's beetle wasn't too expensive, but people who could afford it usually didn't have the first car in their family. Lin Yi's beetle was easily let through by the security guards. He didn't ask around for directions, either, and drove around the area until he found Area F. It was actually quite easy to find the area, with all the bungalows and villas in the area. Lin Yi parked the car in front of the 6th villa and got out of the car. However, Lin Yi didn't press the doorbell. Instead, he stepped on the transformer box beside the villa and jumped up to the balcony on the 2nd floor. Although Guangbua lived in a luxurious villa, he wasn't a person who liked luxury. He lived here because of his identity as a shareholder. Sometimes, he couldn't afford to lose face. If he lived in a shabby place, his business partners would be worried about his capabilities. Guangbua didn't remarry after losing his wife in his middle age. He didn't have much desire for material things, and he wasn't interested in women either. So after his wife passed away, he didn't bring any random women back to live with him. Guangbua's biggest wish was that his son could take over his career and make a name for himself. However, he didn't expect that his son would get addicted to gambling and drugs. He sent his son overseas to study with good intentions so that he could come back and help him. Gambling wasn't a big deal. A little gambling was fun, and Guangbua would occasionally play a few rounds with his old friends. But drugs, that was a bottomless pit. No matter how much money one had, it would be sucked into it. This time, his son actually owed a foreign mafia 100 million. Although Guangbua was furious, he only had one son, and he couldn't just ignore it. Guangbua had just ended the call with his son. Seeing his son beaten up badly, Guangbua's heart ached. He wanted to rush to his son's side and save him. Guangbua. A voice sounded in front of Xie Guangbua. Xie Guangbua was startled. He subconsciously raised his head and saw a shocking scene. Who are you? Guangbua looked like he saw a ghost as he looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. He had ended the call with his son and was in a daze for a while. Then, there was another person in the room. The reason why Guangbua was surprised wasn't that Lin Yi had snuck into his room without a sound, but that Lin Yi had gotten in. When he was on the phone with his son, Guangbua purposely locked the door from the inside to prevent the housekeeper and bodyguards from hearing what he said. The room key was in his hands, so how did this person get in? More importantly, how did he get in? There were nannies and bodyguards downstairs, and it was impossible for him to enter without alerting them. If it was a normal visit, the nannies would have notified him, and if it was an abnormal intrusion, the bodyguards would have stopped him. But this person came in and stood in front of him, and he didn't even notice. Chapter 310. The bodyguard appears. Lin Yi pointed at the open window, not answering Guanbo's question. Can I ask you something? Why did you support Jin Gubong in the board meeting? Guanbo paused, understanding where Lin Yi was coming from. Pengzhan sent you? You can leave now. Go back and tell him that there's no room for discussion. You've been eating too many stupid pills, haven't you? Why would he send me here? I'm helping out of my own volition. Lin Yi curled his lips. Did this guy think he was some small fry? Asking him to pass on the message? Was he stupid? Pengzhan treated him pretty well, but Lin Yi had come to Song's Han only because of his old man. Other than old Lin and his assassin master, there was no one else who could send Lin Yi to do anything. Then what do you do? Guanbo was a little surprised at Lin Yi's words. This guy didn't seem to be Pengzhan's follower at all. What did he do then? Lin Yi frowned impatiently. I'm Meng Yao's bodyguard. Guanbo was taken aback. Meng Yao's bodyguard was here for him? Wasn't he being a busybody? You're Meng Yao's bodyguard. What are you doing here instead of protecting her? You don't believe me when I say you're retarded. Lin Yi glared at him like he was an idiot. Pengzhan's Meng Yao's dad. Who's going to pay for my expenses if he loses his job? Lin Yi was just saying that to draw a line between him and Pengzhan. Pengzhan could push all the blame away if things got exposed. If word got out that Pengzhan threatened the shareholders, it wouldn't be good for his reputation. Guanbo was speechless. Were you the retarded one, or was I? Why was a bodyguard like you meddling in company business? Guanbo realized something all of a sudden. You're here for money, aren't you? Tell me how much. It was no wonder that Guanbo thought of Lin Yi as a money grubber. Lin Yi's identity had nothing to do with the company's business. I say, why are you talking so much nonsense? Do you want to die? Lin Yi kicked the safe beside him, sending it flying. It landed in front of Guanbo with a bang, just 1 centimeter away from his toes. Guanbo was completely caught off guard. Cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. Was he still human? Was he really a bodyguard? How could he be so awesome? He could send a safe that weighed a few 100 pounds flying with just 1 kick. When he looked at the safe, Guanbo felt a chill down his spine. On the side of the safe, there was a big hole. He was kicked out by Lin Yi. This kind of vault safe was surrounded by thick iron plates. How could he kick a hole through it? It was already difficult for the thief to cut it open with a chainsaw. So how could he kick it? Of course, this was not the main problem. The main problem was that if the safe had flown any higher or further, he would have lost his life. I want you to stay away from Jin Gubong. Do you understand? Lin Yi didn't bother asking why the guy was helping Jin Gubong. As long as he was afraid of death, he'd better get as far away from Gubong as possible. Guanbo's face paled, but he didn't say anything. He couldn't answer Lin Yi. What would happen to his son if he stayed away from Jin Gubong? Guanbo was scared, but he couldn't lower his head. Tell me, how much money do I have to pay for you to let me go? Money? You think you're rich? Lin Yi said disdainfully as he walked over. Guanbo shrunk back subconsciously. Lin Yi, however, didn't do anything to Guanbo. He walked over to the safe that was dented by the kick and pulled hard. The door was pulled down by Lin Yi. Is there any money in this safe? Lin Yi flipped through the contents of the safe and found a bank book. He opened it, but Lin Yi was disappointed. There was a lot of money in the bank book, 40 million, but it had all been withdrawn a few days ago. There's only a few kwai left in your bank book. How are you going to give me money? Guanbo remembered that he'd transferred all his savings to his son a couple of days ago. Where would he have the money to give to Lin Yi? TSK. Looks like you're in need of money? Is that why you agreed to Jin Gubong's request? Lin Yi tossed the bank book aside and continued flipping through the contents of the safe. He smiled when he took out a stack of documents. Pengzhan Industries shares? All right, you can transfer them to me now. No. Guanbo abruptly sat up straight, a determined look on his face. That's impossible. Huh? Is that so? Lin Yi tossed the shares to the side. Do you want your life or the shares? However, at that moment, the door was kicked open and a man rushed in. As soon as the man rushed in, he shouted, Mr. Xie, are you all right? As soon as he asked the question, he saw Lin Yi and tensed up. He'd heard the loud noise coming from Guanbo's room and felt that something was wrong. He'd rushed up to see Lin Yi, as if he was facing a powerful enemy. The man was around 30 years old, with an unprepossessing appearance. He was the type of person who'd be easily overlooked in a crowd. This type of person was perfect for a bodyguard. Guangbo let out a breath of relief when he saw the man walk in, a relaxed expression on his face. He knew how strong a bodyguard was, and although Lin Yi was strong, he wasn't a match for this man. Huang, kill him. Xie Guangbo ordered the man who just came in. This person who could threaten his life, Xie Guangbo would not let him live in this world. Otherwise, the bodyguard could protect him, but it was impossible for the bodyguard to be by his side 24/7, especially when Lin Yi could sneak into his room without a sound. If there was a first time, there would be a second time. Guangbo was afraid of this kind of ability. If Lin Yi attacked him without alerting him next time, it would be difficult for him to escape. However, as he shouted, he'd already flown up and threw a punch at Lin Yi. Who are you? Huh? Lin Yi smiled faintly as he raised his fist. He didn't move from his spot, as if he was welcoming someone. The man was stunned. He didn't expect Lin Yi to take his punch head-on. This made him feel incredulous, and he increased the strength of his fist. He was ready to kill Lin Yi with one punch. Chapter 311. More than life bang. A loud sound rang out, and Lin Yi didn't move an inch from where he stood. Huang, on the other hand, flew out in a straight line, landing on the wall in front of the room with another bang. The wall caved in, and the decorative picture frame fell to the ground, hitting Huang's head. Huang, however, was already unconscious, lying there motionless with a trail of black blood at the corner of his mouth. Lin Yi hadn't used his full strength after all. An early phase golden class master wasn't worth it at all. Lin Yi had only reflected Huang's attack back at him. It was the same as punching himself. It wasn't enough to take Huang's life, but he'd have to stay in bed for a while. Lin Yi was here to negotiate with Guangbo, not to kill him. As for his bodyguard, Lin Yi wouldn't kill him. You, just who are you? Guangbo didn't expect his bodyguard to die before Lin Yi could even finish one move. Of course, he didn't know that Huang was still alive. As far as he was concerned, Huang hadn't moved at all after flying out. What else could it be other than dead? I told you, I'm Meng Yao's bodyguard, or maybe I'm not her bodyguard. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Lin Yi shrugged. But now, can you sign the shares transfer agreement with me? I don't want to kill anyone, so don't force me. Guangbo was a little dispirited. Huang was his only hope, and he knew how strong he was. He was a legendary golden class master. If Huang hadn't owed him a favor back then, a master of that level wouldn't have come to protect him. But a master of that level had been killed by Lin Yi. This shocked and terrified Guangbo. I can't transfer the shares to you. Guangbo shook his head. Absolutely not. So you want to die? Lin Yi was a little annoyed. There were people who cared about money more than their lives. This was the first time. This guy was obviously scared out of his wits, but when it came to shares, he refused to budge. I don't want to. Guangbo shook his head, his eyes flashing with determination. I can't give you the shares, even if I die. Lin Yi really didn't know what to say. He really wanted to slap this guy in front of him to death. Lin Yi picked up the door plank of the safe. He wanted to give Guangbo another shock. He wanted to bend the plank to scare him, but Guangbo misunderstood. He thought that Lin Yi had lost his patience and was about to kill him. Guangbo suddenly said, "Wait, don't kill me. I can give you the shares, but you have to wait for a few days." How many days? Lin Yi was taken aback. At least after Jin Gubong becomes the chairman of the company, I'll give all my shares to you. Xie Guangbo said, even if I go to jail, it doesn't matter. You can kill me and I'll give you the shares, but I can't do it now. Guangbo's words confused Lin Yi. He had to wait for Jin Gubong to become the chairman before giving him the shares. He could even kill him afterwards. Was there such a ridiculous thing in the world? Was this Jin Gubong his father or grandfather? Was he really worth doing this for? What did Jin Gubong give you? Lin Yi frowned. My son, he's studying abroad, but he got addicted to gambling and drugs. He owes the local mafia 100 million, and they've got him under their control. They'll kill him if I don't give them the money. Guangbo knew that if he didn't explain things to Lin Yi Yi wouldn't let him go. He might even kill him in a fit of rage. Oh, you're saying that Jin Gubong paid for your son's debt? Lin Yi frowned. So that was the reason? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. What a pitiful parent. In order to save his son, Xie Guangbo would rather die than to transfer his shares to him. But in order to save his son, he could give up his shares and life. No, he doesn't have that much liquid cash, and neither do I. Guangbo smiled bitterly. My son owes them US dollars. The 40 million I have in my bank account is just a drop in the bucket. But Jin Gubong has promised me that he'll let me use the company's funds after he becomes the chairman. Fuck. Lin Yi really wanted to curse. This Jin Gubong was quite mean, agreeing to something like that. It seemed like he was willing to do anything to become the chairman, sacrificing the company's profits for this position. Where's your son? I'll bring him back, and you'll give me the shares. Lin Yi didn't use a questioning tone at the end, but a commanding tone instead. It was an unquestionable order. Guangbo blinked. What? You don't believe in my strength? Lin Yi narrowed his eyes at Guangbo. No, of course not. Guangbo quickly shook his head. What a joke. How could he dare doubt Lin Yi's strength now? Even Ah Huang was beaten to a point where he didn't even know if he was dead or alive. Strength like that was rare in this world. But, as strong as he was up against a four mafia. Could he really bring his son back? Do you really think your son will come back safe and sound after giving the money? Lin Yi looked at Guangbo mockingly. Why don't you use your brain and think about it? Do you think he'll let a money tree like this go? Drug and gambling addictions are the hardest to kick. As long as he's still alive, you'll just have to prepare more money next time. Guangbo didn't deny it. He agreed with Lin Yi's words in his heart. This wasn't the first time his son had asked for money, but there were all sorts of reasons he'd come up with before, but none of them had asked for as much as this time. He'd offended some powerful people. He wanted to buy a car. His girlfriend ran away with someone. Guangbo told his son to come back as soon as possible after giving him the money, but his son didn't seem to listen at all. Now that he thought about it, Lin Yi was probably telling the truth. His son was using the money to pay off his debt and loan sharks. I'll give you 1 second to think. Do you want to die now? Or do you want to bring your son back and give me the shares? Lin Yi looked at Guangbo as he slowly raised the safe. All right, 1 second's up. Wait. Guangbo quickly waved his hand. I agree. Chapter 312. Yao Yao's complaint. Lin Yi looked at Guangbo and nodded, satisfied. He threw the safe down. Let's put off Jin Gubong. I'll get your son back in a week. Don't try anything funny, or you and your son. Lin Yi didn't finish his sentence, but Guangbo understood what he meant. Don't worry. As long as my son's fine, I'll cooperate with you no matter what. Guangbo had thought it through as well. Lin Yi really bringing his son back would be for the best. He'd have no shares and no money, but he'd be able to let his son live a hard life like a normal person. Without the money for drugs and gambling, his son might be able to walk the right path. I hope you'll do as you say. Lin Yi looked at Guangbo deeply, noticing that his eyes were clear. I'll fulfill your wish as well. Give me your son's information and send it to my voicemail. My phone number is 152x times 1234. I'll send it to you in a bit. May I ask? Guangbo asked carefully. He won't die. A golden class master like him only needs half a month to recover. Lin Yi said with a wave of his hand. Guangbo's heart skipped a beat. Lin Yi could see through Huang's strength so easily. What kind of strength did he have then? But the stronger Lin Yi was, the happier Guangbo was. It was the only way Lin Yi could bring his son back from the mafia. Lin Yi didn't jump out the window this time. He walked out the front door with a swagger, disappearing from Guangbo's sight in the Beetle. Beetle? Guangbo blinked. He glanced at the license plate and remembered that it was Yushu's, Meng Yao's best friend's car. Was he really one of Meng Yao's people? But Guangbo couldn't believe that a master like that would be Meng Yao's bodyguard. How was that possible? Even Peng Zhan's Faubert wasn't as strong as him, was he? Guangbo shook his head and stopped guessing Lin Yi's identity. There was no point in guessing. He just needed to follow Lin Yi's instructions. She called Nurse Wang in the servant's room and asked her to send Ah Huang back to his room. Since Lin Yi said that Ah Huang was fine, it should be fine. When he entered the room, Ah Huang was already awake. He opened his eyes with difficulty and looked at Guangbo. Mr. Xia, I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you. Don't say any more. The other party was very powerful. Are you all right? Do you need to go to the hospital? Guangbo waved his hand. He couldn't blame Ah Huang for being weaker than him. Ah Huang had tried his best. No, I'll be fine after some rest. Huang shook his head. He's at least a late phase golden class. Mr. Xia, you're not hurt? No. Guangbo smiled bitterly. A late phase golden class was 2 levels higher than Ah Huang. Naturally, Ah Huang wouldn't be a match for a master like that. Lin Yi drove back to the villa area only to find that Peng Zhan's car was still there. Peng Zhan wasn't in the car anymore, but Faubert was sitting quietly in the driver's seat. Where's Uncle Chu? Lin Yi asked after parking the car. In the villa, Mr. Chu told you to go find him when you got back. Faubert nodded to Lin Yi. Lin Yi entered the villa to see Peng Zhan talking to Meng Yao on the sofa. Yushu was watching TV on the side as well. Meng Yao wasn't happy to see Lin Yi so late. Daddy, look at Lin Yi. He's always so late. You're the one who hired him 24 hours a day. How could he be so undisciplined? Meng Yao said as she looked at Lin Yi proudly. Let's see if you still dare to go out and flirt with other girls. My daddy's here now. You've caught him red-handed, haven't you? Let's see how you explain this. But, to Meng Yao's surprise, Peng Zhan interrupted before Lin Yi could explain. Yao, Lin Yi want to do something for me. Don't talk nonsense. Plus, Lin Yi takes care of your studies during the day and stays by your side at night. What kind of work discipline is that? Can't he have his own things to do? Daddy, Meng Yao wasn't expecting to be scolded instead of Lin Yi. She glared at Lin Yi with an unhappy face. This guy, how could he be protected by her daddy like this? If it weren't for the fact that she was her mother's only child, and that her father wasn't a playboy, she would have thought that Lin Yi was her father's bastard. All right, Yi, come with me for a bit. Yeah, let's go to your room. Peng Zhan didn't bother with his daughter. He'd been busy with company matters, and in order not to worry his daughter, he'd forced a smile on his face as he talked to her about her studies. Now that Lin Yi was back, Peng Zhan couldn't wait to know the results. Okay, Uncle Chu. Lin Yi nodded before entering his room with Peng Zhan. Peng Zhan was getting impatient the moment he closed the door. How did it go? What did Guangbo say? He won't be hanging out with Jin Gubong for the next couple of days, but I'll have to go overseas for a while. Lin Yi said, Abroad? What's going on? Peng Zhan was delighted to hear that Guangbo wouldn't be supporting Jin Gubong. As long as Guangbo didn't interfere, Jin Gubong wouldn't be able to do anything on his own. Xie Guangbo's son owes the mafia a loan of $100 million. Lin Yi explained simply. Guangbo supported Jin Gubong as the new chairman because Jin Gubong agreed to let him use the company's funds to pay off his son's debt. So that's the reason. Peng Zhan said, Then you're going overseas, bringing his son back in exchange. Lin Yi said casually. But don't worry, Uncle Chu. It's only a 10-hour trip, and 2 days is more than enough. 2 days, and you'll be able to bring him back. Peng Zhan blinked, but nodded at the thought of Lin Yi's efficiency and skills. Then I'll have to trouble you. Be careful, but I'll have to trouble Faubert for a few days. I'm afraid that Guangbo's sudden betrayal will drive Jin Gubong to the wall, and he might do something extreme. Lin Yi said, I'd have him disappear if I wasn't afraid of causing trouble for you. Chapter 313. Chapter 313. Small matter. Peng Zhan's words warmed Lin Yi's hearts. It seemed that Peng Zhan wasn't treating him as a hired person. He was caring for someone younger than him. Uncle Chu, actually this is really a small matter. Lin Yi felt very blessed right now. Someone cared for him every day. Was this the life of a normal person? Small matter? This is a small matter? You're about to face a foreign mafia. Peng Zhan said seriously. They're different from the gangsters back in China. They're a bunch of desperados with guns and ammunitions. How am I supposed to answer to Elder Lin if something were to happen to you? Even my father wouldn't let me off the hook. Lin Yi didn't know how old Lin communicated with Peng Zhan, but it seemed like the old man didn't know what he'd done in the past. Not to mention a mafia leader, He'd even send private armies and mercenary leaders of smaller countries to their deaths. Uncle Chu, you'd know if you knew my old man. Actually, what I'm about to do is really a small matter. Lin Yi explained with a bitter smile. All right, I believe you. Peng Zhan nodded after hearing Lin Yi's words. You could just call Faubert and get him to take care of the plane ticket. I'll be going back first. Since Guangbo won't be on Jin Gubong's side anymore, I'll have to reconsider how to deal with Gubong. All right, take care, Uncle Chu. Lin Yi got up and walked Peng Zhan to the door. Peng Zhan waved his hand and left the villa after a few words with Meng Yao. It was getting late, and Meng Yao and Yushu locked the door and turned off the TV, yawning as they went upstairs to sleep. Lin Yi, on the other hand, sat in front of his computer and logged into his mailbox. As expected, Guangbo had already sent all the information on his son to Lin Yi. Xie Guangbo's son was Xie Jinbiao. He was 19 years old and was an international student. However, he was now brought to a remote town called Blue Town. It was a border town of a small country. Due to its geographical location, public security was very chaotic. The entire town was under the control of the local gangs. Xie Jinbiao was captured there. The Blue Water Gang didn't seem to be afraid of revealing their location to Guangbo because the city was completely under the mafia's control. They didn't think that Guangbo's influence would reach here at all. Even the other gangs nearby would give the Blue Water some face and wouldn't trespass on their territory for no good reason. Of course, the Blue Water leader didn't think Guangbo had the ability to do so, even if he did. Life or death was up to the Blue Water Gang's whims once they entered the city. The headquarters of the Blue Water Gang was located in the ancient Blue Castle of Blue City. The castle had a bit of history and belonged to the owner of the city, a great family that had a glorious era. But that was a thing of the past, since the entire family had been wiped out after offending a powerful being a few decades ago. That was a very powerful family. In the past, the business and political power of the little blue city was completely controlled by this family. So when this family was destroyed, this place was in a state of chaos for a period of time. A few years later, Blue Town was taken over by the Blue Water and order was restored. It was just a small gang, after all, and couldn't compare to a big family. The city's economy plummeted, and the Blue Water Gang had no choice but to use drugs and gambling to attract tourists. A strange smile appeared on Lin Yi's face as he looked at the information Guangbo had given him. Blue Town? Blue Castle? That name sounded familiar. His assassin master had said that he'd wiped out a trash family before, but Lin Yi couldn't remember if they lived in Blue Castle. Lin Yi called Faubert and asked him to book a plane ticket for tomorrow night. It wouldn't take more than 2 days, and it shouldn't affect his attendance at Kong Xiaobo's birthday party. Lin Yi got a call from Xu Amin the next morning. The Lius had already gathered the money for the doctor's treatment, 100 million. They could transfer it over at any time. Lin Yi was amazed by this. Weren't the Lius a little too efficient? They had money so early in the morning? What they didn't know was that Elder Jinhu was the pillar of the Lius. No matter how much money they had to protect him first. I understand, Grandpa Guan. I'll be there in a bit. Lin Yi said, let them wait. Xu Amin smiled and hung up the phone. He told Lu Tianyi about Lin Yi's intentions. However, Lu Tianyi wasn't angry at all. Everyone was like this, so what if he had to wait for a while? If Lin Yi heard that the money was ready and rushed over, Lu Tianyi would even suspect that Lin Yi was a scammer. Now that Lin Yi didn't seem to care, Lu Tianyi felt that it was normal. 100 million. If it was any other ordinary teenager, they might not know what to do. How big of a number was that? But Lin Yi had asked for 100 million straight away, as if he didn't care about it all. Lu Tianyi felt that Lin Yi was very confident that he could cure his old man's illness. That was why he dared to ask for such a price. Lu Tianyi had Wu Huiru get ready to wake up the old man, while he contacted his subordinates to prepare the money as soon as possible. It wouldn't be fun if Lin Yi turned around and left in a rage before the money was ready. Lin Yi put his phone down and went to the kitchen. He needed breakfast every day anyway, so he'd bring some for Meng Yao and Yushu along the way. Come to think of it, the girls were quite pitiful. Their parents were busy with work, and they didn't have anyone to take care of them. They were in their 12th year of high school, studying late into the night with severe lack of sleep. How was this the life of a miss? The two were smart, but there were too many smart people in the college entrance exam. In the end, it still depended on who had the most preparation. Being smart wasn't enough to get good grades. This was something Lin Yi admired. Even if they didn't take the college entrance exams, Pengzhan could have easily found a good university for them with his strength alone. Yet they relied on their own hard work to get good grades. This was a fundamental difference from Zhong Pingliang, who only knew how to eat and wait for death. Chapter 314. Pingliang, depressed Lin Yi drove his old van to school, following Faubert's Bentley from afar. Actually, Faubert's skills were more than enough for him to handle emergencies. There weren't many people who would attack this bulletproof Bentley on the way to school. Lin Yi saw Tang Yun, Kong Xiaobo, and Lu Xinwen getting off the bus when they were almost at school. He didn't think that they would bump into each other in the morning. Lin Yi had heard that Kong Xiaobo and Tang Yun were going the same way, but Kong Xiaobo didn't know Kong Xiaobo before. Now, Kong Xiaobo could officially stand together with Tang Yun, his sister-in-law. Lin Yi pressed the horn twice. Xiaobo frowned as he turned around to see an old van. What the hell was an old van honking for? Plus, the road was wide and there was nothing in the way. But Tang Yun looked at the bun and found it familiar. She looked at the person in the driver's seat, and a smile appeared on her face. That smile made Lin Yi a little dazed, and he almost drove the car over. Fortunately, his reflexes were quick, or it would have been a tragedy. Is that boss? Kong Xiaobo saw that it was Lin Yi who was driving. He ran over with his backpack and jumped in. He called out to Tang Yun and Lu Xinwen. You guys get in too? Tang Yun was a bit bashful. They were almost at school. Why would they need to take a car? Wouldn't it be fine to just walk? Okay, Lu Xinwen replied and pulled Tang Yun into the van. Boss, is this your car? Kong Xiaobo looked at the broken van, speechless. This was completely different from the boss Lin he knew. Hey, you guessed it right. This is my car. Lin Yi handed the license to Kong Xiaobo. I just got it yesterday. Kong Xiaobo looked at the license and saw that it was indeed Lin Yi's name. He was speechless. This car really belonged to Lin Yi. Was the Beetle really borrowed? Boss, is this the car you mentioned yesterday? Kong Xiaobo handed the license back to Lin Yi. Yeah, I'm actually really poor, but I have a rich relative. It's already good enough that I can drive this car. Lin Yi smiled. Lin Yi's words touched Kong Xiaobo and Lu Xinwen. Lin Yi didn't seem to be the young master they were talking about. However, it was commendable for him to use all his money to pay for Xiaofan's medical fees. Tang Yun had long noticed that Lin Yi was different from others. She was curious about Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't look like a young master, but sometimes Lin Yi was even more arrogant than those young masters. As for this car, Tang Yun was familiar with it. It seemed to be the car that was snatched from Heibao that night, and Lin Yi took it for himself. Although Tang Yun didn't approve of this robbery, Heibao was too much. Being punished by Lin Yi with a car was already very light. Of course, Tang Yun didn't know that Heibao was still lying in the hospital's intensive care unit. The bones in his body were all broken. It would take at least half a year for him to recover. Lin Yi parked the car in the food street behind the school, and the four entered the school together. The students of the school were already used to these four people who were often together. Even Wang Jifeng, the Dean of Academic Affairs, was not used to them and nodded at them. Dean Wang. Lin Yi suddenly remembered that he was going abroad and wanted to ask for a leave. Oh, Lin Yi, what's the matter? Wang Jifeng squeezed a smile on his face. He already had a shadow in his heart. Every time he had an affair with a female teacher, he couldn't help but think about it. Lin Yi knew about it. So when Lin Yi called him, he couldn't help but think about the affair with the female teacher. This was a strange circle, the cycle of cause and effect, repeated over and over again. However, Wang Jifeng was a bit afraid. This kid always did things that made him feel embarrassed. Would he find him for something? Well, I might have something to do these 2 days. I need to ask for a few days of leave. Is that okay? Lin Yi asked. If that's the case, of course it's okay. Go do what you need to do. I'll tell your homeroom teacher. Wang Jifeng heard this and immediately calmed down. Jifeng calmed down after hearing that. It wasn't a big deal at all, and it wasn't the first time Lin Yi skipped class, either. After Wang Jifeng left, Kong Xiaobo was a bit curious. Boss, you need to ask for leave? What do you need to do? You won't miss my second grandpa's birthday this weekend, right? Tang Yin also widened her eyes and stared at Lin Yi. She also wanted to ask, but Kong Xiaobo asked first. Only Lu Xinwen wasn't interested. Whether Lin Yi went to school or not didn't have much to do with her. I was invited to treat a patient. Lin Yi naturally couldn't say that he was going abroad, so he said it with a lie. Treat? You know how to treat patients? Right? You know, acupuncture. Lu Xinwen was a bit surprised, but she suddenly remembered what happened with Xiaofan and nodded. I'm just going to help. Lin Yi smiled. That's not bad. Kong Xiaobo gave a thumbs up in admiration. Boss, hurry up and improve your medical skills. It would be great if you can treat Xiaofan. I will work hard. Lin Yi nodded. Kong Xiaobo and Tang Yin knew that Lin Yi had some medical skills, so they didn't find it strange that Lin Yi went to see a patient. Last time, Lin Yi told Tang Yin that he had a way to treat Xiaofan's illness, but he couldn't do it now. So Tang Yin and Kong Xiaobo naturally thought that Lin Yi was talking about his medical skills not being enough. Tang Yin wanted to ask Lin Yi if he could take a look at her father's illness, but she remembered that Lin Yi couldn't do anything for Xiaofan, so she didn't ask. When they entered the class, Meng Yao and Yushu were already sitting on their seats. Lin Yi and Kong Xiaobo walked in, and the two raised their heads to look at Lin Yi before going back to their work. Pin Liang was depressed. He had said that he was going to write a letter of love to Meng Yao yesterday, but it ended because of the bloody mess. No one brought it up today, but Pin Liang felt like everyone was looking at him strangely. It was almost as if they were mocking him. Pin Liang didn't know if it was his imagination playing tricks on him, but he felt a little uneasy. Chapter 3:15. You're being insincere? HM? Xiaofu paused. You're still writing it? Yeah, I sent out the news yesterday, saying that I'm writing a letter of blood to Meng Yao. There was an accident, but what do you think people will think of me if I don't write it? Won't they think I'm a coward? Pin Yang asked. This. Gao Xiaofu put down his bag and said hesitantly, Liang Ji, to be honest, a man should always keep his word. I feel that whether or not people laugh at this matter and how they view it, it has nothing to do with you. What matters is what Meng Yao thinks. Meng Yao's attitude is the key. That's right. Pin Liang slapped his thigh, suddenly enlightened. Fu, you're the one who woke me up from my daydream. It's true. What other people think has nothing to do with me. It's Meng Yao's attitude that matters. But how do I know what Meng Yao thinks? Does she want me to write her a letter of blood or not? That Xiaofu wasn't sure. Maybe you can ask her? How am I supposed to ask her? Fu, maybe you can ask Yushu? She's good friend with Meng Yao. You can ask her. Pin Liang suggested. That works too. I'll ask her. Xiaofu nodded and took out his phone, sending Yushu a text. With modern communication tools like phones, there was no need for him to ask her personally anymore. Miss Yushu, may I ask what Miss Meng Yao thinks about Liang Bro's letter of blood yesterday? Xiaofu's text was very politely. He was afraid that Meng Yao would ignore him. It wasn't long before Xiaofu received Yushu's reply. Yao Yao said that Liangzi's hands are only good as a water gun. Forget about the letter of blood. Xiaofu wanted to laugh, but didn't dare. He handed the phone to Pin Liang. Pin Liang didn't quite understand after reading the text. Fu, what do you think she means? Liang Bro, forgive me for being blunt, but I think Meng Yao looks down on you. Xiaofu said carefully. Despise? Pin Liang paused and looked at the message. There was indeed a hint of disdain in it. He panicked. Fu, what should we do? Indeed, it's as if Yushu is laughing at me for not being able to write a blood letter. Brother Liang, why don't you write another blood letter? Prove to them that it's not that you can't do it, that what happened yesterday was just an accident. Gao Xiaofu suggested. That's fine. Pin Liang nodded. This was the only way. Xiaofu quickly prepared a new piece of paper for Pin Liang. Pin Liang held the carving knife in his hand, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. It wasn't that he was afraid of pain, It was just that yesterday's incident had left a lingering fear in his heart. What if he cut his finger and caused it to bleed profusely? Pin Liang hesitated. Liang bro, what's wrong? Xiaofu asked, noticing Pin Liang's hesitation. Xiaofu, I don't dare to do it anymore. What happened yesterday was too fucking scary. Pin Liang's hand was shaking as he held the carving knife. Plus, if he were to cut it today, he'd have to get a new finger. He couldn't keep cutting on the same wound yesterday. Wouldn't that hurt? As a result, Pin Liang couldn't bring himself to do it. Liang bro, a man should be harder on himself. Do you want me to help you? Xiaofu asked. You'll help me? Pin Liang blinked. Sure. Fu, you're such a good friend. If that's the case, I won't hold back. I'll treat you to lunch. Xiaofu paused as well, a bitter smile on his face. He wanted to cut Pin Liang's finger with a carving knife, but Pin Liang had clearly misunderstood him, thinking that he wanted to cut his finger and write a blood letter for him. What's wrong? Pin Liang handed the carving knife to Xiaofu. Is there a problem? No, nothing. Xiaofu took the knife and gritted his teeth, cutting his index finger. Blood gushed out, but Pin Liang's hemorrhage from yesterday didn't happen. All right, Fu, don't move. I'll use your finger to write a blood letter. With that, Pin Liang held Xiaofu's finger and started writing on the paper in front of him. What he didn't know was that this wasn't unseen. Yushu, who wasn't far away, had her phone raised and zoomed in on the camera, just enough to see Pin Liang and Xiaofu clearly. Yao, this Pin Liang guy isn't much, isn't he? He's using Xiaofu's finger to write a blood letter for you? Isn't that a little too insincere? Yushu said with a giggle. What does that have to do with me? Meng Yao said, ignoring Yushu as she continued reading her book. Man, that's boring. Yushu put her phone away, a little disappointed. I wanted to see Pin Liang's hand turn into a water gun one more time. Meng Yao was speechless. What was there to see? Were you afraid that Pin Liang would die too slowly? The first class ended, and Pin Liang ran over to Meng Yao's desk with a letter written in Xiaofu's blood. He held the letter up with both hands. Yao, please accept my confession of love from the bottom of my heart. Meng Yao frowned. She didn't even look at Pin Liang, nor did she care about him. Yushu, on the other hand, stood up with a smile and took the letter from Pin Liang's hands. Let me check it for you first. Is there anything wrong with it? Okay. Pin Liang was overjoyed that Yushu was willing to help. With Yushu, Meng Yao's best friend, giving him pointers, wouldn't it be just a matter of time before he got to Meng Yao? Yushu opened the letter. She didn't want to read it. Actually, she didn't have the time to read this guy's crappy letter. But Yushu had an even better idea. What do you think? Pin Liang looked at Yushu expectantly, waiting for her pointers. Hey, why didn't you sign it? Who'd know who wrote it if you did that? Yushu's eyes darted around. She'd finally found an entry point. Sign. Pin Liang blinked. Isn't this a letter written by me? Do I even need to sign it? Of course, you're not sincere at all, Yushu said with a straight face. You don't even have a sign on your letter. It's not official at all. No wonder you couldn't get Yao after all this time. Yushu curled her lips as she spoke, a look of disdain on her face. Chapter 316. The best partner. You don't have to go back. You can do it here, Yushu said with a half-smile as she looked at the Band-Aid on Pin Liang's hand. Other than the cut on his index finger yesterday, Pin Liang had also wrapped a Band-Aid around his right middle finger to confuse Meng Yao and Yushu. He couldn't let them know that today's blood letter was written with Gao Xiaofu's blood, after all. Here? Pin Liang paused before a bitter smile appeared on his face. The wound on my hand has dried up. I'll have to go back and get a carving knife. Oh, it's fine. I have a carving knife here. I'll lend it to you. With that, Yushu pulled out a carving knife from her bag like magic and handed it to Pin Liang. Pin Liang sweated. Why was he so unlucky? He had thought that he had escaped death, but he did not expect that he would still have to cut his finger. Yushu was right here, too, and it wouldn't be right if he didn't do it. Pin Liang's face was covered in cold sweat. It's not a good idea to do it here, is it? What if the blood spurts out everywhere and scares you guys? I say, Liang, you don't get it, do you? Yushu said. How could I let you go back? I still want to see you bleed nonstop. She pretended to be teaching him a lesson. Cut your finger in front of the girl you love and sign your name on the blood letter in front of her. That's the only way to show how much you love her. Is that so? Pin Liang was starting to get excited. And I'll do it now? What are you waiting for? Yushu asked back. Then, all right. Pin Liang's face lit up with determination. Meng Yao was amused. This Shu really didn't bat an eyelid when it came to messing with people. Zhong Pin Liang was in big trouble because of Shu, but she hated Pin Liang, so she didn't try to stop him. However, it was also because of Meng Yao's indifferent attitude that Pin Liang thought that she was agreeing to it. Under normal circumstances, Meng Yao would have kicked him out impatiently if she didn't like him. But this time, Meng Yao didn't say anything, which meant that she agreed. This made Pin Liang even more determined. He took the carving knife from Yushu, wondering which finger he should cut this time. While Pin Liang was hesitating, Yushu sent a message to Lin Yi. Shield bro, Pin Liang's cutting his finger again. Please come help. Pin Liang gripped the carving knife, gritting his teeth as if he'd made a difficult decision. Abruptly, he cut off his right thumb. He could only cut this finger. It was not convenient to write on the other fingers. Lin Yi looked at the message on his phone and stood up slowly. He walked over to Pin Liang, a smile on his face when he saw him cut his finger. It seemed like the kid hadn't learned his lesson from yesterday. Don't block the way, Lin Yi said as he pulled on Pin Liang's arm, causing him to stumble. Pin Liang was just about to sign his name when Lin Yi's voice came from behind him, startling him. He thought that Lin Yi was going to kick him again, but after the push, Lin Yi strode over without hesitation. Phew! Pin Liang breathed out in relief. It seemed like Lin Yi didn't do anything to him because he was in a hurry to go to the washroom. Wah! Yushu pointed at Pin Liang's finger excitedly. Liang Yi, your finger's bleeding. That's so cool. Do you have superpowers? Is this the legendary 6 pulse blade? Pin Liang blinked, not understanding what Yushu was talking about. He lowered his head to continue writing, only to realize that the paper was already soaked in blood. His hand, on the other hand, blood was gushing out like a fountain, just like yesterday. Ah! Pin Liang yelped as he tossed the blood letter aside and ran back to his seat. Phew! Band-aids. Give me a Band-aid. Yushu raised 2 fingers in a V shape as she watched Pin Liang run away. She cheered happily. Yay, success. Shield bro and I work well together. Meng Yao didn't know what to say as she looked at her best friend. She was now certain that Pin Liang's bleeding yesterday had to have been caused by Lin Yi. Before Lin Yi came over, Pin Liang's finger was still bleeding very slowly. But after Lin Yi came over, the blood was gushing out like a fountain. It was obviously Lin Yi's doing. Lin Yi and Yushu, they really were a match made in heaven. The prankster duo. It'd be hard for Pin Liang not to be crippled in the future. Meng Yao's heart ached a little at the thought of Yushu and Lin Yi being a match made in heaven. She had to admit that Yushu and Yushu were very similar in some ways. Hee hee yao yao, what do you think? Feels good, right? Let's see if Pin Liang dares write that blood letter again. Yushu turned back to look at Pin Liang, only to see him trying to wrap a Band-aid around his wound. One Band-aid wasn't enough to stop the blood anymore. Pin Liang had no choice but to wrap it around his finger with cellophane tape. Only this sort of airtight tape could stop the wound. Pin Liang found it strange. How did his finger end up like this? It had never happened before. Lin Yi went to the washroom and returned to the classroom. Yushu winked at him and made a victory sign with her hand. Lin Yi smiled. Boss, why did you go out just now? Didn't you see that amazing scene? Kong Xiaobo looked at Lin Yi with a pitiful expression. Oh, what's wrong? Lin Yi asked with a smile as he sat down in his seat. You didn't see it, but Pin Liang started spewing blood again. It was spectacular. I've never seen anyone bleed like that before, Kong Xiaobo said. You didn't see it, but it's even worse than yesterday. The blood was shooting out of his hand. Ah, is that so? Lin Yi said. Of course it was worse than yesterday. He'd only sped up his blood circulation yesterday, but he'd raised his blood pressure today. Lin Yi's phone vibrated again as he spoke. He'd received a text. Great teamwork, the best partner. Yay, yay, yay. Chapter 317. I don't understand, Kong Xiaobo asked curiously. Boss, whose text is it? It can't be from sis-in-law Tang Yun, right? What Tang Yun? She doesn't even have a phone. Lin Yi glared at Kong Xiaobo. It's the weather report. Oh. Kong Xiaobo remembered that Lin Yi was going to buy a phone with Tang Yun at noon. He was going to buy one for Xiaofan as well. At noon, Lin Yi, Tang Yun, Kong Xiaobo, and Lu Xinwen left the school together. Lin Yi had an old van, so he didn't need to take a taxi anymore. Although the car wasn't good, it was better than nothing. Tang Yun, Kong Xiaobo wants to buy a phone for Xiaofan. It'll be easier to contact her. What about you? Lin Yi asked Tang Yun, who was sitting in the front passenger seat. Kong Xiaobo gave the seat to Tang Yun and sat in the back with Lu Xinwen. Me? I'm not buying it. I don't have much use for it. Tang Yun shook her head. Her family situation didn't allow her to buy a phone. Although it wasn't expensive, she would need to buy a SIM card and a monthly rental fee. It wasn't a small amount, so Tang Yun rejected it. Boss will pay for it. Xiaobo continued. Fan's phone was a gift from my boss, sis-in-law. She'd never accept it if he bought her a phone if he didn't want it. Sis-in-law, please help me. Tang Yun couldn't help but giggle after hearing Kong Xiaobo's words, begging someone to buy a phone for them. However, Tang Yun remembered that Lin Yi bought her a dress at the night market and asked her for 50 kuai. Thinking about it, it was strange sometimes. Back then, she had hated him to death, but now, she was sitting quietly in his car. Sitting beside him, she'd thrown the dress in her closet because she was mad. But she'd probably be able to find it when she got home tonight. Tang Yun couldn't help but smile at the thought. Would she have accepted the dress if he'd given it to her? The answer was no. But now, Lin Yi wanted to buy her a phone, and after some persuasion from Kong Xiaobo, Tang Yun acquiesced. Lin Yi parked the car in front of a mobile phone store, and the four of them got out of the car together. When the salesperson saw that the four of them were wearing school uniforms, he knew that they were students. He immediately recommended a few cheap cell phones. Kong Xiaobo also wanted to buy a cheaper phone. He didn't want Lin Yi to spend money on a smartphone that easily cost a few thousand yuan. What price range do you want to buy? The salesperson asked. Kong Xiaobo wanted to say 200 or 300 yuan, but Lin Yi had to make the decision. So he turned to look at Lin Yi. Lin Yi knew that Kong Xiaobo wanted to buy a cheaper one. According to his plan yesterday, he wanted to buy 200 or 300 yuan, but Lin Yi didn't want to buy one that was too cheap for Tang Yun. If he bought one that was 200 or 300 yuan for Xiaofan, Lin Yi naturally wouldn't buy one that was too expensive for Tang Yun. Differential treatment, and it wouldn't be good if Xiaofan had any ideas. Around 1,000 yuan. Lin Yi thought about it and set a price. Tang Yun wouldn't be able to accept a price that was too expensive, so this price should be about right. Nokia 5233. This phone is very popular among students. It's cheap and has all the functions, but it lacks the GPS function compared to the 5230. But you students won't need that function anyway. The salesperson took out a phone and introduced it to Lin Yi and the others. The price is cheaper than the 5230, only 833 yuan. What do you think? Lin Yi pushed the phone to Tang Yun, asking for her opinion. It's pretty good, but it's a bit expensive. Tang Yun still couldn't accept the fact that she wanted something from Lin Yi. Although Kong Xiaobo tried to persuade her for a long time, she still felt that she shouldn't buy it. Lin Yi smiled and said to the salesperson, "Then I'll take 3 of these phones. How about we buy the 300 yuan one?" Tang Yun saw that Lin Yi wanted to buy it, so she hesitated and pointed at the 300 yuan phone. "Please, Kong Xiaobo is giving it to Fun. It's too shabby, he can't take it out, right?" Lin Yi whispered. "Oh." Tang Yun could only nod, but she felt a bit depressed in her heart. She owed Lin Yi more and more. How about you pay him back? From a barbecue recipe, to him helping her and her mother chase away those bullies, to Fun's medical fees, although Kong Xiaobo played a part in it, most of it was because of her face. So Tang Yun couldn't pretend that she didn't know anything. He saved her again. Now he wanted to buy a phone for her. Tang Yun didn't know if her relationship with Lin Yi would become more and more complicated if this continued. Did he really like her? While he was hesitating, Lin Yi had already bought 3 phones and 2 SIM cards. One of them was Fun's birthday, and the other was Tang Yin's birthday. Xinwen was in charge of both of them. Lin Yi swiped the card and distributed the phones. Tang Yin got one, Kong Xiaobo got one, and Lu Xinwen had an older phone, so she didn't need to buy it. Lin Yi used the last one for himself. The expensive phone from before was also broken, so Lin Yi bought a cheap one. No matter how expensive it would be ruined if it was soaked in water. Lin Yi's job was more dangerous, so he chose a cheap phone. If it wasn't for the fact that Yushu's phone was too feminine and Lin Yi didn't want to take it out, Lin Yi would just use it. Tang Yin sighed lightly. She owed him a lot. She owed him a lot already, so a phone wouldn't make much of a difference. But when she got in the car, she whispered to Lin Yi, "Thank you." Lin Yi smiled and turned his head to look at Tang Yin mischievously. "Then how are you going to thank me?" "Wah, how am I going to thank you?" Tang Yin jumped and blushed, remembering what she promised him yesterday at the hospital. Her heart raced. "Yesterday at the hospital, you still owe me a kiss," Lin Yi said in a low voice. As expected, he was talking about that. Tang Yin blushed. "What? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand." Chapter 318. A moment of brilliance. Lin Yi drove Tang Yun, Kong Xiaobo, and Lu Xinwen to the entrance of the hospital. "Then, I'll be leaving?" Tang Yun hugged the phone, feeling a bit uneasy. It was the first time she'd received such an expensive gift from someone, and it was from a boy. Tang Yun couldn't calm down for a long time. "Yeah, I won't be using my phone for the next few days. Text me if there's anything. I'll check it after I turn it on." Lin Yi said, "You can take a taxi with Xiaobo later. Let him pay." "Ha!" And Tang Yin couldn't help but smile as she listened to Lin Yi's words. Her smile was like a blooming flower. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat as he grabbed Tang Yun's hand and pulled her back. What are you doing?" Tang Yun froze and looked at Kong Xiaobo and Lu Xinwen, who'd already gotten out of the car. She let out a breath of relief when she saw that they weren't looking at her. "Aren't you going to say something before we leave?" Lin Yi pointed at his face. I'll say it again." Tang Yun couldn't stand Lin Yi's teasing. She struggled out of Lin Yi's hand and ran out of the car. Her heart raced as she let out a long breath. She looked at Lin Yi and pouted before turning around and ignoring him. If it had been anyone else, Tang Yun would have run away crying. But with Lin Yi, all she felt was shyness. Tang Yun, who suddenly realized this, started to feel lost. Was it a good thing for her to fall deeper and deeper in love with Lin Yi? "Yin, what's wrong? You don't look well?" Lu Xinwen was talking to Kong Xiaobo when she looked up to see Tang Yun's reddened face. It was like she had a heat stroke. It's nothing." Tang Yun quickly shook her head. Let's go." Xinwen shook her head. She didn't know what happened to Tang Yun. She turned around to look at Lin Yi's car, but realized that Lin Yi's car was already far away. She could only bury the question in her heart. Before leaving the country, Lin Yi had to deal with Lu Zhenhu's illness first. While he could extort some money from a man, he could also give Xiumin time to start planning for the medical company. This incident made Lin Yi realize that it was better to be on time than to be on time. He was just thinking about how to get 100 million yuan of startup capital, and in the blink of an eye, the Lu family sent it to him. The efficiency of raising funds was probably unmatched. Lin Yi gave Guan Xiumin a call and told him to call Zhenhu and the others over. He'd be there soon. "All right, Lu Tiany's already waiting here, waiting for your news. He'll have someone bring Elder Lu here." Xiumin said. "Have you had lunch?" "Not yet, but there's no rush," Lin Yi said. "All right then, I'll have Xin prepare some food." Xiumin made the decision for Lin Yi. All right. Lin Yi didn't argue about these trivial things and drove straight to Xiumin's house. By the time Lin Yi got there, Zhenhu was already there. He was sitting in the living room waiting for Lin Yi. When he saw Lin Yi walk in, Zhenhu stood up with Lu Tiany's help. "Miracle Doctor, I'll have to trouble you then." Zhenhu's attitude made Lin Yi a little embarrassed. He took so much money from him, and he was still being so respectful to him. But he really needed money right now, so he couldn't be soft-hearted. Plus, he couldn't be blamed for this. They only had themselves to blame for marrying a snobbish daughter-in-law and having a retarded nephew. Elder Lu, you don't have to be so polite. Lin, he waved his hand. Let's go find an empty room. All right, Miracle Dr. Lin, about the consultation fee. Lu Qianni wasn't an idiot. Even if Lin, he didn't ask about the consultation fee, he couldn't not mention it. If he pretended not to know, then he'd be an idiot. Grandpa Guan, do you have a bank account? Transfer it directly. Lin, he turned to Xiumin. Transfer it to my account. Xiumin paused for a moment, then understood that Lin, he wanted him to plan for the medical company. He nodded. All right, transfer it to my account first. Mr. Lu, do you know my account number? I do. Lu Qianni nodded. He'd planned to transfer 2 million to Xiumin as well, so he'd memorized Xiumin's number. Lu Qianni called one of his subordinates and had them transfer the 100 million to Xiumin's account. A moment later, Xiumin's phone rang with a notification. After confirming that there were no issues, Lin Yi nodded in satisfaction. It seemed that Lu Qianni was a man of his word. He didn't have to completely cut ties with him in the future. But that wife of his was nothing to be proud of. In an empty room upstairs, Lin, he had Jinhu lie down and asked Xiumin for a box of silver needles. He then looked at Jinhu quietly, not in a hurry to insert the needles. He was thinking about something. He'd already checked on Jinhu's condition the first time they met, so he didn't need to check it again. What he needed to do now was think of a treatment plan, the quickest and most effective way to cure Jinhu's angina. Of course, a complete cure wasn't possible, at least not right now. Old Lin's miraculous pills were hidden away like treasures, so he couldn't take them out even if he wanted to. But it was possible to keep the disease from acting up for 10 years, but that was a bit of scam. Lin, he sighed. Whatever, he'd keep the disease under control for 10 years first. If Jinhu really did live to 100 years old, then he'd think of something else. With that in mind, Lin Yi quickly inserted needles into Jinhu's body. His speed was so fast that even Xiumin, the god of acupuncture, was in awe. He did it in one go. 2 minutes later, Lin Yi began inserting needles into each needle. Neguan, Ximen, Inshi Juk, Shanzhong inject energy into the needles. Jiao Lao's voice suddenly rang in Lin Yi's ears. Lin Yi was overjoyed. He didn't know what kind of person Jiao Lao was, but with his help, things would be much easier. Lin Yi hurriedly did as he was told. The needle handle that had been injected with energy suddenly began to vibrate with a buzzing sound, as if something was driving it. Even when Lin Yi's hand left the handle, the needles continued to vibrate on Jinhu's body. Chapter 319. A master in disguise, Lu Qianni, who'd been watching Lin Yi's acupuncture, didn't know much about acupuncture, but he was still shocked by what he was seeing the same expression on Guan Xiumin's face. Lu Qianni was even more certain that Lin Yi was a master in disguise. In actuality, Lin Yi was just as shocked as Qianni and Guan Xiumin were. He didn't think that infusing the art of dragon mastery into the needles would result in something like this. Jiao Lao, what's going on? Lin Yi asked. It's normal. Jiao Lao's voice was still calm. Although you can't use the energy from the art of dragon mastery to treat the patient with your first stage, you can still maintain it like last time. Do as I say, and you should be able to make it through 10 years. What? That's it? Lin, he was pleasantly surprised. In his original plan, he'd planned to use acupuncture and medicine together. As long as the patient kept taking medicine after the acupuncture, he'd be able to control the angina, but he'd have to do acupuncture once a year. Of course, he'd thought of an excuse beforehand. He'd said that he'd check up once a year, and the Lius would be more than happy to bring Jinhu over for acupuncture. That way, he wouldn't go back on his promise, saying that he'd treat Jinhu for 10 years, not all at once. But now, he didn't have to worry about that anymore, because Jiao Lao's voice sounded. Of course, the pure energy in your body is more than enough to maintain a patient's bodily functions, and that's it. Is that strange? It is. Does that mean other golden class masters can do the same? Lin Yi asked. Didn't I say it before? Only the energy in your body is pure energy. The martial arts they practice produce pure qi, and every martial art has a different type of pure qi. That's why the pure qi produced only works on their own martial arts. If used on others, it'll either be useless or have the opposite effect. Jiao Lao said with a tone of exasperation. Ha, I see. Lin Yi laughed awkwardly. In front of others, Lin Yi could call them idiots, but in front of Jiao Lao, Lin Yi could only laugh dryly. All right, time to put the needles away. Now, follow the order I say, and insert the needles into Jian Shu. Jiao Lao named a few more acupoints. Send the energy in. Lin Yi did as he was told, and the needles danced again. Guan Shuimin was amazed, and Lu Tianyi even looked up to Lin Yi as if he was a god. The 100 million was worth it. If he had an argument with Lin Yi because of the 100 million, not only would he have missed out on such a miraculous treatment, but the Lu family would have missed out on a miracle doctor. Phew! Lin Yi let out a long breath. Although he had enough energy in his body, transmitting the energy for a long time still made Lin Yi sweat. After repeating this 3 times, Lin Yi put away the needles, wiped the sweat off his forehead, and said, "Done. Done?" It wasn't that Lu Tianyi didn't trust Lin Yi, but it had only been an hour or so. His father's angina had been treated for so many years, and he had visited countless famous doctors to no avail. How could he be cured in a little more than an hour? Although he had seen the magic of Lin Yi's acupuncture, it was still hard for Lu Tianyi to believe that Lin Yi had cured his father's illness in such a short amount of time. But he didn't dare to ask, afraid that he would make Lin Yi unhappy. He could only hold back his questions and look at his father. "Dad, how do you feel?" Lu Tianyi could only ask his father how he felt. "Much better, so comfortable. But my body feels so uncomfortable. I need to take a bath." Lu Zhenhu felt refreshed, but there was a sticky feeling on his body that was very uncomfortable. Huh? Lu Tianyi ran over to help his father up, but he was shocked to see a layer of greasy black and yellow dirt on his father's skin. What? What is this? Guan Shuimin also walked over after being reminded by Lu Tianyi. When Lin Yi was performing acupuncture, the two of them were afraid that they would affect Lin Yi, so they stood far behind him. When they got closer, their hands were trembling in shock. Bone and marrow cleansing? Guan Shuimin naturally knew about bone and marrow cleansing in ancient medicine, but it had been lost for many years. Bone and marrow cleansing referred to the use of acupuncture or herbs to expel toxins from the body, achieving an effect similar to rebirth. It was inevitable that toxins would be stored in the body when humans ate grains. Although metabolism could expel some of it, there was still some that would be absorbed by the body. As time went on, the toxins would accumulate more and more. Guan Shuimin didn't expect Lin Yi's acupuncture to be so effective. Not only could it cure diseases, but it could also expel toxins from the body. Lin Yi paused when he heard what Guan Shuimin called him, but then Zhao Yazi's voice sounded in his ears. "Lin Yi, your pure energy has a part of the effect of expelling toxins, so even if you didn't do it on purpose, it would still bring about this result. But that Lu Zhenhu will probably live a few more years, and you'll have to perform acupuncture on him in 10 years. Lu Zhenhu? Lin Yi didn't know what to say, but it wasn't all that strange coming from Jiao Lao's mouth. Jiao Lao was an old monster, and although Lin Yi wanted to ask, Jiao Lao kept saying that he was too weak to know too much, so there was nothing Lin Yi could do. But one thing was for sure, Jiao Lao was far older than Lu Zhenhu, which was why he called him kid. Huh? Lin Yi smiled, but didn't explain. It seemed that Lu Zhenhu's 100 million hadn't been spent in vain. Not only did it cure his illness, it also extended his life. Good things like this couldn't be bought with money. But since Zhenhu was going to live a few more years, Lin Yi had to give him a heads up. Elder Lu's health isn't good, so I did it for a bit. But I have some bad news for you, Mr. Lu. Oh, what news? Please tell me, Miracle Dr. Lin. Lu Tianyi was startled. He'd thought that bone and marrow cleansing was a good thing, and the excitement from Guan Shuimin made him think that his father had gotten a great bargain. But then he heard Lin Yi say that there was bad news. Even the usually calm Lu Zhenhu couldn't help but raise his head. Didn't Lin Yi say that he was cured? Why would it be bad news? Could it be that bone and marrow cleansing was harmful to the body? But why did he feel so good? Chapter 320. Let me tell you some bad news, Lin. He wasn't expecting everyone to be looking at him with such nervous gazes. Did he scare them with his tone? Mr. Liu, I said I could cure Elder Liu's illness in 10 years. So it's 10 years. That bone and marrow cleansing thing is a complimentary gift. Lin Yi paused. But the bad news is that you'll need to prepare the money 10 years from now. You'll still need to prepare it. Elder Liu can live for more than 10 years after the bone and marrow cleansing. Liu Qianni blinked, surprised and overjoyed at the same time. This wasn't bad news at all. It couldn't be any better. How could it be bad news? So what if he had to prepare money after 10 years? As long as his father lived, House Liu would continue to prosper. Liu Qianni was so moved that he couldn't speak. Miracle Dr. Lin, you're the savior of House Liu. Lin, he waved his hand. All right, I'm tired. I need a rest. Yes, yes. Miracle Dr. Lin needs to rest. I'll take my father to the bath first. Liu Qianni didn't want to disturb Lin any longer. He wanted to say some more words of gratitude, but held them back. Jinhu couldn't help but be overjoyed at Lin Yi's words. Not only would he live for another 10 years, he'd be able to live a few more years on top of that. This was really good news. Tianni, you have to prepare a big gift for young Miracle Dr. Lin after this is over. Consultation fee is consultation fee. Thank you gift is thank you gift. You can't mix the two together. Jinhu knew how important a miracle doctor was to the family, and naturally he wouldn't let go of any chance to befriend Lin Yi. Jinhu wouldn't look down on Lin Yi anymore. Age didn't determine one's ambitions. Lin Yi might be young, but he was capable. Yes, Dad, I understand. Liu Qianni quickly nodded and helped his father up. No, I feel like I'm 10 years younger. It's like I've returned to the time when I was in my 70s. My body is very good, and I have strength. Jinhu waved his hand and stood up, pacing a few steps around the room. Not bad. Not bad at all. Liu Qianni was even more surprised at this moment. Although he did not doubt the authenticity of Lin Yi's words, it was not as shocking as seeing it with his own eyes. His father, who used to need the help of others to walk and couldn't walk fast, was now walking as if he was flying. Was this still an old man in his 90s? At this moment, Liu Qianni had also made up his mind to build a good relationship with Lin Yi at all costs. This was a rising star in the medical world, after all. His family had to make the first move and wait for the news to spread. All the noble houses would flock to fawn over Lin Yi, and then the Lius would have nothing to do with it. Liu Qianni, Jinhu, and Xiumin left the room and closed the door for Lin Yi. Lin Yi was a bit tired, but he silently practiced the first stage of the art of dragon mastery in his mind. The energy he had lost was replenished, and he was back to his energetic self. You brat, how can you be so devious? You can't cure his illness, and you're telling him to prepare the money 10 years later for treatment. And he's still grateful to you. Jiao Yazi's voice rang out. Then what should I say? That I didn't cure him. Lin Yi sweated. He really was a bit devious. But you're not devious enough. You're not as devious as my master uncle. If it were him, he would have asked for another bone and marrow cleansing fee. Jiao Yazi said. Lin Yi fainted. When Lin Yi came downstairs, Guan Xian had already placed the dishes on the table. Jinhu and Liu Qianni hadn't left either. Jinhu had clearly just showered, as his hair was still damp. However, he looked energetic as he chatted with Xiumin about something. Jinhu and Liu Qianni stood up again when Lin Yi came downstairs. Miracle Dr. Lin, you've worked hard. It's nothing. Is it time to eat? Mr. Liu and Elder Liu, would you like to join us? Lin Yi looked at the food on the table. It was enough for a few people, so he invited them. Then I'll gladly accept your invitation. This old man will shamelessly come and freeload. Jinhu wanted the Lius to get closer to Lin Yi as well, so he immediately accepted Lin Yi's invitation. The Lius were now convinced that Lin Yi really was Xiumin's mentor. Although this was Xiumin's house, it wasn't appropriate for them to stay and eat with Lin Yi. Guan Xin brought out the dishes one by one, and then placed the bowls and chopsticks on the table like a little wife. All right, let's eat together. You must be hungry, right? Let's skip the formalities and get straight to the point. Xu Min was worried that Lin Yi would be too tired, so he asked everyone to get straight to the point. All right. Lin Yi nodded, but noticed Guan Xin standing to the side. Guan Xin, you're here too? Guan Xin looked at Xu Min. In the past, when Xu Min's friends came over, Guan Xin wouldn't join in the fun. After all, she was a junior. Yesterday, it was only Lin Yi, and the two knew each other, so Xu Min wanted to introduce Lin Yi to her. That was why Guan Xin came. But today, Zhenhu and Lu Tianyi were here, so it wasn't appropriate for Guan Xin to just sit down. Xin, let's eat together. You can sit next to Yi, Xu Min said with a smile. Okay. Guan Xin nodded, happy as she sat down next to Lin Yi. Lu Tianyi wanted to sit next to Lin Yi to get closer to him, but Guan Xin suddenly sat down. He was a little disappointed, but at the same time, he started to pay more attention to Guan Xin. Guan Xin's shy and happy expression just now was reflected in Lu Tianyi's eyes. Lu Tianyi wasn't an idiot. He could tell Guan Xin's feelings for Lin Yi with just one look. No wonder Lin Yi was so close to House Guan. It was because of this. It seemed that even if he got to know a miracle doctor like Lin Yi, he couldn't cut off his connection with Xu Min. Lu Tianyi made up his mind. Guan Xin put 100% of her effort into cooking today's meal, and it was a world of difference compared to yesterday's. Lin Yi, of course, ate heartily. Guan Xin, on the other hand, ate very little, but she was even happier to see Lin Yi enjoying the food. Lin Yi didn't linger after the meal. He still had to prepare for his trip abroad, and it was about time for him to leave for the airport. His flight was at 4 in the afternoon, and it was already 1. Lu Tianyi and Zhenhu were a little disappointed to see Lin Yi leave in a hurry, and so was Guan Xin. Xu Min, on the other hand, didn't mind. He used to look forward to Lin Yi's visits, but now that he had a project with Lin Yi would definitely come more often. Chapter 321. Meeting Wang Xinyan again. Faubert's Bentley was already parked in front of the villa. Lin Yi parked the van in the garden and opened the door for Faubert. Faubert, wait for me. I need to get changed. Okay, just in time to prepare the things you need to bring. Uncle Fu nodded and said. Lin Yi was wearing a school uniform right now. He couldn't just leave the country like that, because it would be too eye-catching. The Songshan First School's uniform wasn't very eye-catching in Songshan, but it wasn't available in other cities, let alone overseas. If Lin Yi were to appear in that uniform, he'd definitely be noticed by the local gangs. Lin Yi changed into the casual clothes he'd bought at the night market and put on a pair of sunglasses. He then took out the blade from his shoe and threw it into the drawer. Something like that wouldn't be able to get past airport security. He'd just buy another one and put in his shoe when he got there. Lin Yi left his phone on the desk and came out without anything else. You're not bringing anything? Faubert looked at Lin Yi's outfit, a little surprised. What's there to bring? I'm just bringing someone back. Lin Yi shook his head. Faubert didn't say anything as he handed a credit card and plane ticket to Lin Yi. This credit card can be overdrawn up to $1 million USD. The password is the same as the one I gave you before. Lin Yi didn't decline and put the card and plane ticket into his pocket. Lin Yi wasn't a stranger to flying, but this was his first time using Lin Yi's identity. He'd had all sorts of random names when he was on missions before. Lin Yi packed lightly and got on the plane in no time at all. Faubert had bought a first-class ticket. With Pengzhan's wealth, a first-class ticket wasn't much at all. Faubert had bought a transfer ticket that required a transfer at Yinjing. However, as soon as Lin Yi boarded the plane, he closed his eyes and prepared to sleep. Sir, can I go over? Lin Yi's seat was near the aisle. As soon as he got on the plane, he lowered his head as if he was asleep. However, in fact, Lin Yi didn't sleep. He just closed his eyes. When he heard someone talking, he guessed that it might be the passengers sitting inside. So he stood up, but when he saw the person, he was stunned. It's you? Xin Yan looked at the man in the big sunglasses. He looked familiar, but she didn't know who he was. You're Lin. He was stunned. He then remembered that he was still wearing sunglasses, so he reached out and took them off. What about this time? It's you, Lin Yi. Xin Yan looked at Lin Yi, a little surprised. What are you doing here? But then Xin Yan realized that her question was a little stupid. They were on a plane, and Lin Yi naturally had to take the plane to Yanjing. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here. Ah, why you're here is why I'm here. Lin Yi shrugged. Do you have luggage? I'll help you put it on. Yeah. Xin Yan nodded after a moment of hesitation. She was dragging a suitcase, and it would be a little troublesome for a girl to lift it up. She wanted to wait for the flight attendant to help, but Lin Yi did it for her. Xin Yan didn't hesitate. Thank you. It's no trouble at all. Lin Yi opened the luggage rack with one hand and grabbed Xin Yan's suitcase with the other, placing it firmly on top of it. Xin Yan's mouth was agape. The suitcase wasn't heavy, but putting it on with one hand showed that Lin Yi had quite the strength. Xin Yan sat down, and so did Lin Yi. Thank you for last time. Xin Yan had always wanted to say thank you to Lin Yi. If it weren't for Lin Yi, she would have gotten into a lot of trouble. It's nothing, it's nothing. Lin Yi shook his head. Plus, didn't you help me on the train last time? Ha, that time? Xin Yan smiled at the memory of what happened on the train. You really scared me that time. I thought you were tricked, but who would have thought that those people were the ones who got the worst of it? You're going to Yinjing too? Yeah, it's just a transfer. Lin Yi nodded. Oh, I see. Xin Yan was a little disappointed. She wanted to treat Lin Yi to a meal to express her gratitude, but Lin Yi had a transfer, so he couldn't leave the airport. The airport was mostly full of fast food, and it wasn't suitable for a formal treat. What about you? What are you going to Yinjing for? Lin Yi asked. I'm going to take care of some family matters. Xin Yan's face darkened a little. Oh, Lin Yi saw that Xin Yan didn't seem to want to talk about herself, so he didn't press the issue. The two fell into silence. It was obvious that Wang Xinyan was a girl who wasn't good at communicating with people. She was a bit of an introvert, after all. She wouldn't have been listening to her MP3 player when they met on the train. It was also because Xinyan wasn't good with words that Wu Huiru was able to trick her in the business district of the city center. If it had been Yushu or Xinwen, that violent girl, Wu Huiru would have been the one running. Your phone number is... The two spoke at the same time. Xinyan couldn't help but smile at each other. Xinyan blushed a little. Give me your phone. I'll help you. I don't have it with me. I'll give you my number, and you can text me. Lin Yi said. My number is 152x times 1234. Okay. Xinyan nodded and took out a small phone. She keyed in Lin Yi's number and texted it over. You live in Yinjing? The journey was long, and Xinyan didn't like to talk much. Lin Yi had to find a topic himself. It's my grandpa's house. Xinyan said, a little sad. My grandpa passed away. I'm going to the funeral. Lin Yi blinked, knowing that Xinyan had brought up something sad. My condolences. But why are you alone? My parents passed away before me. I'm still in school, so I had to apply for leave. Xinyan explained. It's nothing. My grandpa and I aren't that close, and we've only met a few times. It's just that I feel bad. My mom broke off with my family when she married my dad. My grandpa and my grandpa are enemies. Lin, he was getting a bit of a headache from listening to this family's relationship was complicated enough. No wonder Xinyan didn't look too sad at all. Perhaps her mother hadn't gone back much after breaking up with her family, and her grandfather was her grandfather's enemy. Naturally, he wouldn't be too nice to someone with the surname Wang. Chapter 322. Incorrect information, Xinyan blinked. You're an orphan? You could say that, but I have an old man who loves me dearly. You could call him adoptive father or grandpa. Anyways, his age is a little awkward. Lin, he scratched his head. I guess I'll just have to call him old man. Xinyan chuckled at Lin Yi's words. You don't have to comfort me. I'm fine. I'm just feeling a little uncomfortable. My grandpa just passed away, and now my uncles are fighting over the inheritance. Even my grandpa's body was left in the hospital, and my parents were the ones who organized the funeral. Lin, he was speechless. He didn't know what to say to Xin Yan's uncles, letting a daughter they'd broken up with come back to take care of the funeral while they were busy fighting over the inheritance. But it's fine. Our family isn't after anything. My grandpa's family is rich, richer, and more powerful than my grandpa's. But my parents have built a place for themselves after all these years. Xin Yan had kept these words bottled up in her heart for a long time, and she probably didn't have anyone she could talk to normally. She decided to talk to someone she could get along with, Lin Yi. It's just that. My uncle said that my mom's going back to fight over the inheritance. Lin Yi didn't know what to say as he listened to Xin Yan's story. This was family business, after all, and Lin Yi wasn't in a position to butt in. I'm just whining. Just don't bother me. Xin Yan shook her head with a bitter smile. It's fine, didn't I tell you? Every family has their own problems, and things like this are hard to deal with. As long as you do your best, it'll be fine. Lin Yi said. Yeah, as long as you do your best, it'll be fine. Xin Yan nodded. The two talked for a while, and Xin Yan seemed to be getting sleepy as well. She leaned back in her chair, falling asleep after a while. Lin Yi turned down the air conditioner for her, before closing his eyes as well. The plane was already descending when Lin Yi woke up. Xin Yan was listening to her MP3 player, a few bags of snacks, and a glass of juice on the table. Xin Yan took her headphones off when she saw that Lin Yi was awake. She handed Lin Yi a bag of snacks from the table. Here, they were distributed on the plane when you were asleep. I got one for you. You can eat it. I don't like these things very much. Lin Yi took a look at it and found it was mostly dehydrated vegetable slices. He didn't like it. Yeah, thanks. Xin Yan seemed to like these snacks a lot, and she'd already finished her portion. It didn't take long for the plane to land at Yinjing Airport, and Xin Yan went to the domestic arrival point, while Lin Yi went to the international transfer lounge. The encounter with Wang Xinyan was just a small interlude, and Lin Yi was on a plane to Blue Town. There was no one he knew on the plane this time, and so Lin Yi closed his eyes and fell asleep. When he opened his eyes, he was already in a foreign land. This was a small town full of exotic atmosphere, but it was not Blue Town. Blue Town was a few kilometers away from here by car. Lin Yi flagged down a taxi after exiting the airport, telling the driver that he was going to Blue Town in English. English was the common language of the world, and it was effective in this exotic European town as well. There were many customers on the way from the airport to Blue Town, and the driver was used to it. Ever since the Blue Water took control of Blue Town, it had become a place of luxury and debauchery, with casinos, red light districts, and drug dealing all over the place. There were a lot of customers visiting Blue Town every day, and the driver thought that Lin Yi was a tourist. You can have some fun there, young man, but don't get too addicted to it. Or else. Sigh. Haha. Thanks. I'm just going to take a look. Lin Yi thought that the driver was a good guy, after all. The driver didn't try to convince him otherwise, and started talking about the local culture in Blue Town instead. Lin Yi had a clear Asian face, and he was obviously a tourist. Don't offend the people in blue baseball caps in Blue Town. They're members of the Blue Water gang, and they hang out in casinos and brothels. The Blue Water is the only gang in Blue Town, and they're very powerful. You might not be able to come back if you piss them off. I've heard of that before. Lin Yi nodded. Right, sir. I'd like to ask, where's the Blue Water HQ? HQ? Why are you asking? The driver asked, suddenly alarmed. I'm staying somewhere far away from them. It sounds scary, and I'm traveling alone. I want to avoid trouble. Lin Yi explained with a smile. Oh, I see. The driver let out a breath of relief. The Blue Water HQ is in an old castle on the west side of the town, but the core of the Blue Water isn't there. The castle is too eye-catching, and there's only the Blue Water members there. I see. Lin Yi wondered. Could the information be wrong? According to the information Guanghua had given him, that Blue Castle was the Blue Water's headquarters. But Guanghua hadn't looked into it before, something that even a taxi driver knew. Haha. Yeah, one of my cousins is a member of the Blue Water, so he knows a bit more. Their HQ is in an auto repair shop in the North District, and only a few people know about it. But you're a tourist from another city, so it's fine to tell you. Try not to go to the North District. All right, I won't go then. Lin, he was moved. Just as he expected. The HQ of the Blue Water wasn't too big of a secret, but it was too far from Songshan, and Guangbua could only find some superficial information. Without actual investigation, there would be no specific search results on the internet. Lin, he had the driver drop him off in the Blue City, and then took another taxi to the North District, finding a hotel to check into. There were plenty of tourists from the east like Lin E, so no one in the hotel paid any attention to Lin E. Lin E took a quick look at the room before leaving the hotel with his sunglasses on, wandering the streets of the North District. Chapter 323. Chapter 323. First time in the city, Lin, he walked the streets of the Northern District leisurely. Lin, he didn't have a destination in mind, so all he needed to do was remember the way back. At an ATM, Lin, he took out a few €1,000 and put it in his pocket before continuing to stroll around the Northern District. A car repair factory. Lin, he frowned. He'd never known it before, but now that he'd come out, he realized just how big the Northern District was. There were all sorts of people with nightclubs, discotheques, and karaoke all over the place. It seemed like the closer he got to the Blue Waters HQ, the more businesses there were. Lin, he didn't believe that these were just legal. Lin, he saw a couple of women flirting with him as he walked past. Of course, Lin, he didn't know if the sex trade was illegal here, and Lin, he didn't have the time to look into it either. After a moment of silence, he made a bold decision. He stopped a man with a scar on his face and a blue baseball cap. This guy didn't look like a good person at first glance, especially the obvious gang emblem on top of his head, which could also prove this point. He wasn't one of the higher-ups of the Blue Water, though. What kind of person would walk around alone without a bodyguard? Do you know who I am, kid? Do you want to die? The scarred man wasn't expecting Lin E to stop him. He started yelling in the local language. Hey, don't rush, bro. Lin, he pretended to be cautious as he looked around. I'm from out of town, and I heard that the Blue Water Gang has some cheap cars for sale. I'd like to buy one to play with. Do you have any connections, bro? Don't worry, there'll be benefits. Oh, you want to buy a car? The scar man looked Lin E up and down. Lin Yi's skin was obviously foreign, and he didn't look like a spy from the cops, either. He didn't say anything else. The Blue Water did have a large number of stolen cars in their hands, and that was one of their main sources of income. They buy illegal and stolen cars from other cities, change their engine numbers and license plates, and then sell them to the less well-managed areas. As a low-level member of the Blue Water Gang, selling stolen cars, drugs, and even bringing customers to the casino would earn them a hefty commission. That was pretty much how they lived. So the scar man was interested when he heard that Lin E wanted to buy a car. What car are you buying? How much is it? Scarface didn't ask Lin E what he was buying the car for, since there was no need to ask. It was a rule in the industry, and if people didn't ask about the origin of the car, then there was no need to care about what the car was for. In any case, the money was exchanged, and the goods were exchanged. They did not owe each other anything, and after that, they did not know each other. Anything is fine, as long as it's a little cheaper. Lin E naturally wouldn't put on airs and buy a high-priced stolen car. Anyway, this kind of thing could be thrown away after it was used. Even if Lin E used Falbert's credit card, Lin E didn't want to cause trouble. Who knew if this guy in front of him was the kind of person who was greedy for money? What if he saw his extravagant spending and had evil thoughts? Lin E wasn't afraid of him, but Lin Yi's main goal was to bring Xie Jinbiao back to the country. He didn't plan on getting into any conflict with the Blue Water Gang. Whether they were good or bad had nothing to do with Lin E. Scarface wasn't disappointed by Lin Yi's words. After all, most of the luxury cars were smuggled to other countries, and the ones left for sale weren't anything good. It was good enough for someone like him to get a deal like this in a month, so he didn't mind. They're cheap, ranging from a few €100 to a few thousand. Dollars are fine too. Take me there, Lin E said. Follow me. Scarface nodded and led Lin E through the Northern District. Lin E followed behind him at a leisurely pace, arriving at the entrance of a car repair shop after 10 or so minutes of walking. A smile formed on Lin Yi's lips. It seemed that he'd made the right bet. The Blue Water's stolen cars were indeed stored in the factory. This repair shop was probably the Blue Water's headquarters. "York, who's this guy?" A Blue Water member with a blue hat standing guard at the door recognized Scarface, but not Lynn. "Here to buy a car." York greeted him with a smile and swaggered into the shop with Lynn E. Evidently, they didn't think that Lynn E would be able to cause much of a ruckus in Blue Water territory by himself. They didn't even bother with a body search before letting him in. Lynn E shook his head inwardly. The Blue Water's management was a little too lax. In actuality, the Blue Water was the overlord of Blue City. The Blue Water members could wipe out anyone who tried to cause trouble in any part of the city, let alone the headquarters. York brought Lynn E to a big yard at the back of the repair factory. There were close to 100 cars parked there, some models Lynn E had seen before, and some he hadn't seen before. They all looked like they'd been there for a long time. "They're all here. Pick one you like and give it a try, it's fine." York's attitude was quite nice. He'd get a high commission if this deal went through, and he'd have a month's worth of pocket money. "This one," Lenny pointed at a nondescript old Santana. "This one? I'll give you a discount. How about €500? York gave a price after a glance at the car Lynn he was talking about. "That's a little expensive, but I'm buying it with sincerity." Lynn, he shook his head. "It's not expensive, it's a reasonable price. This is a car from 10 years ago, and it's still very good." York said, "400. Lenny took a look at the model and condition of the car. It was probably from the 90s, and this car was probably as old as he was. 10 years. Maybe 18 years, a little higher, for 150? York asked. In actuality, Lynn, he wasn't cutting the price too harshly. It was more or less a normal price, and he did look sincere. "For 100 it is. This car is more than 10 years old, and I'm just buying it for a ride. Who knows, I might throw it away in a few days." Lenny said, "All right, 400 it is then." York nodded readily, cash in one hand and the goods in the other. Chapter 324. A cool girl. Nope, remember my number. Call me if anyone tries to stop you. York paused before taking off his hat and handing it to Lenny. "Here, you wear my hat, and the cops in this city won't give us any trouble." "All right, thank you." Lenny put the hat on. "I'll just say I'm Boss York's lackey if anyone gives me any trouble. All right?" "Of course." York was so happy that he couldn't stop smiling when he called him boss. "Just say it. I, York, have a bit of a reputation in this little blue city." Lenny nodded, counting out €400 and handing it to York. He only had a few thousand euros in his pocket, so York wasn't too greedy. He let get in his car after taking the money. The keys were in the car, so there was no need to worry about it being stolen in the garage. He drove out of the garage. Ye's things were a lot easier now that he had the hat, and York thought he'd taken advantage of him. The car hadn't gone far when they saw a pretty girl trying to flag down a car. She waved when she saw Ye's car coming over. Naturally, Lenny wasn't really interested in hitchhiking. There were at least 80 pretty girls who'd hit on him in the north, and no one knew what they did for a living. Lynn, however, was paying attention to the girl because she was an Asian. It was a strange feeling to see an Asian girl in a foreign country. The girl had a pair of sunglasses on her cool face and a black outfit that was quite eye-catching. Lynn, however, felt this sense of familiarity, even though the sunglasses covered most of her face. Lynn, wouldn't have stopped the car if it weren't for the fact that she looked familiar. "What's up?" Lynn, was wearing a blue baseball cap and a pair of oversized sunglasses. His outfit was probably similar to this cool chick's, and it was hard to tell his true appearance from the outside. "Handsome, can I hitch a ride?" The cool chick squeezed out a smile on her cool face. "Hitchhike? I don't even know where I'm going. How am I supposed to drive you?" As Lynn spoke, he sized up the young girl. She looked very familiar, giving Lynn a feeling of déjà vu, but he couldn't remember where. He'd seen too many people these years, and it was normal for him to feel a sense of familiarity from time to time. "That's great. Since you don't know where to go, just send me to Canny Hotel." The cool girl opened the door of the front passenger seat and got in the car. "Huh," Lynn smiled. "I don't know where the Canny Hotel is." "HM?" The girl paused. "Aren't you from the Blue Water gang?" How come you don't know where it is? I just joined. Is there a problem? Lynn, he shrugged. Oh, it's nothing. You drive. I'll show you the way. The girl's voice was a little disappointed, but still cold. Lynn, he started the car, and it started moving slowly. Lynn, he looked at the girl out of the corner of his eye. A tourist from out of town? But Lynn, he didn't think it was possible. How could a tourist from out of town be so bold as to stop a hitchhike on the street? How dare he hitchhike, especially after knowing he was a member of the Blue Water Gang? Wasn't she afraid of death? With that in mind, Lynn, he started to get curious about the girl's identity. Had he seen her before? If he could take off her sunglasses, he might be able to remember. Self-guided tour. The girl's answer surprised Lenny. Self-guided tour? Self-guided tour? You know about the Blue Water Gang? Lynn, he retorted. The girl was obviously lying. Of course I'm interested. I admire the strong. The cool chick tried her best to make her smile more charming and moving, but the forced smile on her cool face was almost the same as a sneer. Lynn, he was speechless. There was no way to lie like that, was there? But he still found it funny. Admire the strong? So you're here waiting for a hitchhike in front of the Blue Water Gang? Yeah, didn't I meet you? The cool chick smiled. Can you tell me about your gang? I want to know. Sorry, I just joined. Sorry to disappoint you. Lynn, he was getting more and more curious about the girl. She didn't even know how to lie. So what did she do? Then you should know who the leader of your gang is, right? Is it Charlton? I heard it's him. The girl asked. Probably. Lynn, he had done some research on the Blue Water Gang, and that seemed to be the leader's name. Then do you know where he is? The girl ignored Lin Yi's. Probably. Is he in this repair shop? Or Blue Castle? In a repair factory? Lin, he answered offhandedly. This was the information he'd gotten from the taxi driver. I see. Then you guys see him? Which building does he usually work in? The cool girl continued to ask curiously. That I don't know. Lin, he wasn't really a member of the Blue Water Gang, so how would he know that much? Why don't you know anything? The girl was a little angry. Then can you take me to him? Why do you want to see him? Lin, he felt that this girl was a little strange, but the question made Lenny frown. There was a black SUV following him from afar. He'd been too focused on talking to the girl and didn't even know where the hotel was. He'd been driving aimlessly, and the car was still following them from afar. He wouldn't believe it if someone told him that he wasn't following them. The Blue Water Gang? Lenny frowned as he thought back to his previous actions. There wasn't anything suspicious about it, and he hadn't even revealed his intentions. He didn't even have a lot of cash on him. So why would someone from the Blue Water be following him? What made Lenny curious was that the SUV had followed him from behind, and not from the Blue Water's repair shop. Lenny had looked behind him when he left the shop to make sure no one was following him. Could it be someone who was following the girl? With that thought, Lin, he felt that it was possible. It was probably after the cool girl was picked up that the MPV behind them caught up. Chapter 325. 10 years later, I worship him. The cool girl wanted to act coquettishly, but there was no coquettish expression on her cool little face. Needless to say, it was very strange. Worship him? Lin, he curled his lips. But I'm sorry, I really don't know him. But you don't look like you worship him, do you? You're a girl, and you're saying you worship the leader of the Blue Water Gang? Do you think you can believe that? The girl's expression froze, but it didn't show on her face. Of course. What else do you think? Nothing. Lenny humphed. That Mitsubishi SUV behind us has been following us for a long time. Do you know it? Mitsubishi SUV. The cool chick was slightly taken aback. She turned her head to look behind her, but when she turned back, there was an angry expression on her face. It disappeared in a flash, and she returned to normal. I don't know him. You don't know it? All right, we'll lose it then. Lin, he sped up abruptly, and the old Santana roared as it shot out like a wild horse, pulling a good distance away from the Mitsubishi SUV. Lin, he then turned to the smaller roads, turning left and right, making sure that the SUV wasn't able to catch up to him yet. After a few turns, he'd left the SUV in the dust. The cool girl watched in shock as Lin, he changed gears and sped up, controlling the car skillfully. Shock flashed across her face. How's your driving skills so good? You have a lot of questions. You've been asking this and that ever since you got in the car. What are you trying to do? Lin, he didn't have the patience to waste any more time with the girl. He wanted to give her a ride since she was an Asian, but he didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble. Asking random questions meant that she wasn't just here for a vacation, and there was a car tailing them. He didn't want to interact with a girl like that for long. Who are you? You're not a member of the Blue Water Gang? The girl finally realized that something was wrong. She thought that Lin, it was a member of the Blue Water Gang based on his attire and the fact that he'd driven from the HQ. But now it seemed that Lin, he didn't know the road at all and was just driving randomly. He managed to shake off the SUV, but that was only because of his driving skills. The reason why the girl felt that something was wrong was because Lin, he had driven into a dead end. There was a landfill in front of them, and there was no other way to go. There were dilapidated houses on both sides of the road, obviously uninhabited. This place was probably the city's garbage dump. Lin, he might have been panicking, but as a Blue Water Gang member who was familiar with the roads, there was no way he'd drive into a dead end like this. Plus, this road wasn't a dead end right away. There were a few more crossroads, but Lin, he didn't turn and drove straight ahead, evidently not knowing that there was no road ahead. Connecting the dots between Lin Yi's claim that he didn't know the Canny Hotel, the girl finally felt that something was wrong. No, Lin, he admitted honestly. I was just going to buy a car. They gave me the hat. The girl was speechless. She frowned, feeling a little depressed and saddened. Was she really a flower in a greenhouse, unable to stand up for herself? She'd gotten hurt the first time she went on a mission, and it hadn't been easy for her to recover. The second time she went on a mission, her family sent someone to follow her from afar. But that wasn't all. The worst part was that she'd misjudged the situation and gotten into the car of someone who wasn't a member of the Blue Water Gang, and even talked so much with him. He was starting to suspect that his mission wasn't going to be a smooth one. The girl's hand shook at the thought, and a sharp dagger appeared in her hand. She swung it lightly, aiming for Lin Yi's chest. Slap! Lin, he grabbed the girl's hand. You. The girl hadn't expected him to grab her hand. She wasn't experienced in society, but her skills were top-notch. Otherwise, her family wouldn't have sent her out on a mission alone. She was confident in her skills. She'd made her move when Lin Yi was defenseless, and if she wasn't mistaken, Lin Yi was trying to figure out how to turn the car around. But Lin Yi had caught her hand while she was distracted. The girl's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to pull her hand back, but found that Lin Yi's hand was like a crab's clamp, holding her hand in place. You, let go of me. The girl didn't just stand there. She clenched her other hand into a fist and punched at Lin Yi's face. Lin Yi frowned and dodged to the side. Didn't you go read up on Mr. Dongwa's story after you got back? Looks like I told you for nothing last time. You didn't listen to me. The girl froze, forgetting about her attack on Lin Yi. A look of disbelief appeared on her face. You're the one who molested me last time? I'm your savior. Lin Yi corrected. I saved your life, and you try to kill me? That's a classic case of biting the hand that feeds you. Today, I was kind enough to give you a ride, and I even answered a bunch of your questions for free, and you try to kill me again. A wronged look appeared on Chi-Chi's face. I was afraid that you'd ruin my plans. That's why I wanted to kill you. And last time, if you hadn't touched my body, why would I have killed you? Lin, he had been observing the girl on the way, trying to remember where he'd seen her before. He just couldn't be sure. But when the girl struck at the end, Lin, he remembered. This girl was the assassin he'd seen in front of the pharmacy back in Songsan, the one who'd lost a lot of blood. You what? Lin, he frowned. I'll count to 3 and get out of the car. Don't ever show up in front of me again, you little bitch, or I won't go easy on you. Lin, he had to admit that Chi-Chi was very pretty, but having a girl who wanted to kill him every day beside him wasn't something Lin wanted. He'd always be able to sense her before she made a move, and the Jade could warn him in advance. Young Chi-Chi felt wronged as she looked at Lin Yi's fierce face. Fine, I'll get out. Revenge is a dish best served cold. I can't beat you now, but I'll come for you in 10 years. Chapter 326. Chapter 326. Sorry Chi-Chi glared at Lin before getting out of the car. Lin stepped on the gas, and the car sped away, and Chi-Chi realized that she was standing in front of the junkyard. There wasn't a single person here, nor were there any taxis. How was she supposed to get back? Chi-Chi wanted to cry as she yelled at Lin Yi's car. Lin Yi, I hate you. Just you wait. Lin Yi's car answered with a puff of black smoke. Chi-Chi helplessly took out her phone and dialed a number. Grandpa Tombstone, did you follow me? No. Just admit it. I'm at the junkyard. I'm lost. Come get me. All right, I'll be waiting. Lin, he was driving out of the alleyway when the Mitsubishi SUV drove past him. Lin, he frowned. It seemed that this car had something to do with the girl. After asking around for directions, Lin, he got back to the hotel he was staying at. It was pretty easy to find the way. Lin, he planned to make his move at night, so he didn't have much to do during the day. He parked the car in the hotel's parking lot, putting the blue baseball cap Yor gave him on the driver's seat to prevent car thieves or unnecessary trouble before entering the hotel. Lin did this because he'd seen a lot of cars like this on the road. It must be some sort of secret signal for the Blue Water Gang. Putting a blue baseball cap in the car would keep thieves away. Lin, he went back to his hotel room and took a nap. He was going to make his move at night, forcefully taking Siet Jinbiao out and back to China. At the same time, Chi-Chi was sitting next to an old man in one of the rooms of Canhee Hotel, a little troubled. Her cool face was red with anger. Grandpa Tombstone, that Lin Yi is a bastard. I'm going to kill him. How dare he leave me in the junkyard? You said that person's name is Lin Yi? Mu Bei paused at the name. Yeah. What, you've heard of this name before, Grandpa Tombstone? Chi-Chi asked curiously. Nothing. Tombstone shook his head. Let's not go for tonight's operation. I'll talk to the patriarch and cancel it. No, I must kill that Charlandon. Chi-Chi shook her head stubbornly. I have to prove to my father that I'm a qualified assassin. All right then, Miss Yang. Please be careful, Tombstone said helplessly. However, I will stay outside the repair factory. If there is any situation, call me at any time. Got it. There was a hint of unwillingness on Chi-Chi's cool face. She didn't want Mu Bei to follow her, but there was nothing she could do. Grandpa Mu Bei must have been sent by her mother. That night, Lin Yi made his move. Lin Yi parked his car not far from the repair factory he'd been earlier in the day and put on his blue baseball cap, striding into the factory. The Blue Water member guarding the door only raised his head slightly to look at Lin Yi, but didn't stop him. He went back to his video game. The people who came to the repair factory at night were all Blue Water members. Normal people wouldn't come to a place like this at night, so the guard didn't think that Lin Yi would come looking for trouble alone. Lin Yi kept his head down with the blue baseball cap on, so no one noticed him. There were at least 300 people dressed like Lin Yi in the factory, all busy with their own things. Lin Yi wasn't in a rush to find out where Jinbiao was being held. He walked around the factory a couple of times, memorizing the layout of the place. You guys, go check out Mr. Wyhan's casinos. Someone's causing trouble there. Bring him back and have his family and friends prepare $50,000 to pay for his ransom. A coarse voice called out to a few Blue Water members. Yes. After these members received the order, they got into a few cars and sped away. The man who'd been cursing earlier was about to leave when a knife appeared on his neck. Don't scream, or I'll kill you. Lin, he was actually looking for a Blue Water leader as he walked around the factory. Normal gang members wouldn't be able to find out where Jinbiao was being held. After all, everyone was busy with their own business. Kidnapping Jinbiao to extort money from Guangbua wasn't a big deal. At least, the Blue Water Gang did this sort of thing quite often. Even their leader, Charlton, didn't know about it. Charlton only looked at the final profits of the gang. As for how, that was handled by the mid-level leaders. So, he couldn't just grab a random person to find out where Jinbiao was being held. That was why Lin Yi hadn't made a move yet, choosing a target instead. Lin Yi wanted to hit the target in one go and not blindly ask a bunch of people. That would only alert the enemy. But finally, Lin Yi ran into the leader who'd ordered his men to capture Jinbiao. Lin Yi was delighted. The person he'd been looking for was finally here. What do you want? The leader was just about to cry for help when he heard Lin Yi's voice. The knife on his neck was real and cold, and he couldn't guarantee that the guy behind him wouldn't stab him to death. "Where are the people you've captured?" Lin Yi asked. "Cut the bullshit and answer me. Don't blame me if you lie." Who are you looking for? Tell me the name, and I'll call my men to release them," the leader said carefully. "Humph." Lin Yi snorted coldly, cutting the knife into the leader's neck. Blood gushed out. "I told you to cut the bullshit and answer me. Are you deaf? Or do you want to die now? I don't mind killing you and asking someone else." Don't, I'll talk." Originally, the leader wanted to play a trick and find out who Lin Yi was looking for. Then, he let his men bring the person out as a hostage to force Lin Yi to give in. But obviously, Lin Yi wasn't even interested in talking. On the count of three, Lin Yi increased the strength of the knife in his hand. "In the basement of the building in front. Don't kill me. I've already said." The leader was scared. "It's in the building in front. Let me go on." Lin Yi said the last number. "Sorry, I didn't stop." Chapter 327. Chapter 327. A thief. Lin Yi took off the leader's baseball cap and shoved the body under a car that hadn't been driven in a while. No one would be able to find him for a while, probably only when his body rotted and started to smell. Of course, Lin Yi didn't believe the leader's words completely. Who knew if he had ulterior motives? Lin Yi didn't go to the building the leader was talking about right away. What if it was a trap? Lin Yi wasn't that careless. Lin Yi walked around the building and crouched down quietly at the door like a normal Blue Water member. A Blue Water member walked out after a while, and Lin Yi followed him, putting a knife to his neck after he'd walked for a while. But this time, the member spoke up before Lin Yi could say anything. "Bro, don't kill me. I just wanted to sneak in to see if I could get some loot, but I went in the wrong place. I didn't do anything. I didn't steal anything. You can search me if you don't believe me. I really didn't steal anything. Please, let me go." Lin Yi paused, speechless. This guy had snuck in just like him, and from what he said, he seemed to be a thief who wanted to fish in troubled waters. "Where did you get that hat?" Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I stole it." The thief didn't try to hide anything. "I saw someone leaving the car, but the window wasn't closed, so I stole it. I heard this was where the Blue Water made their money, so I came to try my luck. Bro, it's really my first time here." "Oh? Then what did you see when you went in?" Lin Yi asked. I didn't see anything, really. I won't tell anyone." The thief was on the verge of tears. "Tell me the truth. What did you see?" Lin Yi asked helplessly. He didn't expect this thief to misunderstand him and think that he wanted him to keep his secret. "Big brother, you're also a sensible person. You know that's where you keep the hostages. Although I saw it, I won't tell anyone. Really, don't worry. I'll keep it to myself." The thief said honestly, "I'm not a professional. I won't report you." Lin Yi listened to the thief's words and knew that he misunderstood, but Lin Yi didn't explain. Now that he had confirmed that this building was really a place to hold the hostages, it was fine. "No one noticed you after you went in? Don't tell me there aren't any of our people inside?" Lin Yi asked. "No, there's no one from you inside, except for the hostages behind the iron bars." The thief thought that Lin Yi was just asking a routine question, so he answered truthfully. He didn't have time to think about why Lin Yi was asking these questions. He was already sweating profusely. "If I let you go just like that, I'll have to bear the risk if the higher-ups ask." Lin Yi didn't want to kill the thief anymore. It'd be more troublesome to deal with the corpse. He might as well let the thief go, but he had to make sure that he didn't get suspicious if he let the thief go too smoothly. "Big brother." The thief took out a stack of money from his pocket. "This is my earnings for the day. You use it to buy some cigarettes. Okay, you know your place. Now scram." Lin Yi took the money and stuffed it into his pocket in satisfaction, sheathing the knife. The thief ran off gratefully, not even looking back as he left the place. Thinking about it, he didn't dare to stay any longer and would probably run out of the repair factory. Lin Yi made sure that there weren't any Blue Water members in the building from the thief's mouth, and so he swaggered in. The first floor was a big hall, but there was nothing there. The second floor was sealed off, evidently used as a warehouse. He went down to the basement and saw rows upon rows of prison-like cells. Some had people sitting in them, some didn't, but none of them raised their heads to look at as he walked past. All of them looked dejected and dispirited. They were probably hostages that the Blue Water Gang had come up with all sorts of excuses, waiting for their families and friends to come with money to redeem them. Still, the Blue Water Gang was pretty cocky, running a blackmail business like this in broad daylight. It seemed that the security here had fallen to a certain level. Xie Jinbiao. He couldn't be bothered to look for them one by one, so he called out the name. Here, here. One of the men in the cell stood up excitedly, waving at as he walked to the edge of the cell. He nodded and quickly walked over. The other hostages were evidently used to this and didn't even raise their heads. Whoever brought the money would be called out and released, while the others wouldn't be able to get out no matter what. They didn't seem to care about Lin Yi's arrival at all. You're Xie Jinbiao? He looked at Jinbiao, noticing that he was very different from the picture Guangbua had given him. In the picture Guangbua had given him, Jinbiao was tall and strong, but this Xie Jinbiao in front of him looked like a sickly person, skinny as a monkey. But upon closer inspection, he could tell that it was the same person. Yes, that's me. Did my dad transfer the money? Jinbiao was a little excited. He'd thought that he was dead for sure, but his father had found a way. Xie Jinbiao roughly knew how much money his family had, but the debt this time was too much. Xie Jinbiao estimated that even if his father borrowed money, he wouldn't be able to borrow so much money, so he was already a little desperate. He unlocked the door with a metal wire and let Jinbiao out. Come with me. Jinbiao followed carefully. He was so excited that he didn't even see He opened the door with a metal wire, thinking that he was a real member of the Blue Water Gang. Where's my dad? Jinbiao asked again when he saw that he wasn't talking. Where's my dad? Can I go now? Put this on and don't talk nonsense. Follow me. He put the baseball cap he'd gotten from the gang leader on Jinbiao's head. Don't ask so many questions if you don't want to die. Chapter 328. Chapter 328. Her again. I'm the one who's bringing you back. He knew that if he didn't explain himself, the kid wouldn't follow him. Your old man doesn't have that much money, so stop asking questions if you don't want to die. You're my dad's man? Jinbiao blinked in surprise. Since when did my dad have such a powerful man? That's amazing. He rolled his eyes. Why was this Jinbiao just as stupid as his old man? He snorted. I wouldn't even take your old man in as my man. Jinbiao finally realized that this person wasn't his father's man, but an expert that his father had hired to save him. Jinbiao's attitude turned respectful. I'll listen to you, big brother. He was amused. This kid was a typical rich second generation. He was so cocky when he thought he was his father's man, but now that he knew he wasn't, he was trying to suck up to him. But he couldn't be bothered with him. Bringing him back to the country was the same as completing his mission, and getting his father's shares in exchange would be considered a success. It was a simple mission, not challenging at all. He shook his head and walked with Jinbiao to the door of the repair factory. But they hadn't gone far when they heard a commotion. Catch him. Don't let him get away. Kill him. Bang, bang. A few gunshots rang out, followed by the screams of a man and a woman. It was obvious that both sides were injured. He frowned. Did someone else invade this place besides him? The thief must have left long ago, so it couldn't be the thief they were trying to catch. And the thief couldn't have a gun on him. It was quite a busy night for 3 groups of people to come to this small repair factory. Big brother, what do we do? Did they find us? What should we do? They all have guns. Xie Jinbiao also heard the shout and was so scared that he almost fell to the ground. Shut up. They didn't find us, but someone else. He glared at the fool and said unhappily, just follow me. Don't talk too much and don't look around. Oh, I know. Xie Jinbiao hurriedly nodded and said, Big brother, will you protect me? If you keep blabbering like this and expose yourself, I'll run away on my own. You can stay here and die. Lin Yi snorted coldly and continued walking forward, ignoring Xie Jinbiao. Jinbiao still wanted to say something, but he was frightened by Lin Yi's cold words and didn't dare to speak. He carefully followed behind Lin Yi. The more chaotic it got, the better it was for Lin Yi. Everyone was focused on the intruder, and no one paid attention to Lin Yi and Xie Jinbiao, who were obviously Blue Water members. And so, Lin Yi calmly led Jinbiao toward the door. As expected, no one stopped them. Jinbiao's heart was in his throat. He wasn't as calm as Lin Yi, sweating profusely. These were real weapons, killing people without blinking an eye. How could he not be afraid? Lin Yi frowned abruptly. The sound were getting nearer and nearer, and it seemed that the intruder was running towards them. Lin Yi was speechless. He turned to Jinbiao. Hurry, they're coming. Oh. Jinbiao nodded and quickened his pace with Lin Yi. Bang! A gunshot rang out, followed by a scream of pain. It was a woman's voice. The two brothers in front. Hurry up and stop that chick in front. A loud voice rang out from behind Lin Yi. Lin Yi had no choice but to stop his footsteps. If he didn't turn back now, the people behind him would probably open fire. If he was alone, he was confident that he'd be able to dodge the bullets behind him and escape. But there was a burden beside him. He could leave, but Jinbiao couldn't. Although Lin Yi had threatened him that he'd leave him behind, Lin Yi couldn't just leave him like that. Leaving him here would mean giving up on Guanghua's shares. Don't talk, follow me, Lin Yi told Jinbiao before turning around to see a figure in black lying not far from him. It was the intruder who'd been shot, but he didn't expect it to be a woman. Lin Yi pretended that he was going to capture the intruder as he walked to the side of the black figure. Hey, brother, what do you think of this chick? The leader who chased after them called out to Lin Yi with a lewd look. Lin Yi squatted down, but he was stunned. He couldn't help but curse in his heart, because the girl on the ground was the cool chick he met during the day. Lin Yi didn't know what to say. This chick repeatedly appeared in front of him and brought trouble to him. She even bit the hand that fed her. To tell the truth, Lin Yi really wanted to leave her here, but she was an Asian after all, and it could be said that they were fated to meet twice in a blue city like this. It was quite a rare encounter. Lin Yi wasn't a person who liked to meddle in other people's business. In fact, Lin Yi was a person who didn't care if it was none of his business. But this chick was someone he knew, and they were from the same sect. If he ignored her and left her here, he was afraid that she would be in danger. Just looking at the gleaming eyes of the pursuers was enough to tell how dangerous this chick was. It's my bad luck to run into you. Lin Yi took a deep breath and snatched the gun from the chick's hand. He aimed at the leader of the pursuers and fired. The bullet went straight in between the eyebrows, and the leader fell to the ground without a doubt. Lin Yi tucked the chick under his armpit with one hand and grabbed Jinbiao by the collar with the other, running towards the factory. In actuality, Lin Yi was just playing with the timing, catching the Blue Water pursuers off guard and causing them to suffer a loss. Lin Yi had pretended to be a member of the Blue Water to help the pursuers stop the chick, so the pursuers naturally treated Lin Yi as one of their own. They were no longer nervous. To them, the chick's capture was a foregone conclusion. So when they saw Lin Yi crouch down, the pursuers naturally lowered their guns. There was no point in raising them. It was a subconscious action. Chapter 329. How could Lin Yi endure this? When the leader fell, the people next to him didn't even have the time to react to how this happened and what was going on. He was their brother, but why had he turned on them and killed their leader with one shot? Who could tell them what was going on? While they were still in a daze, not knowing what to do, Lin Yi grabbed the girl under his arm and Jinbiao and ran away. By the time they realized what was going on, Lin Yi was already out of the repair shop and back at the alley where he'd parked his car. He opened the car door and tossed the girl in the back seat, letting Jinbiao sit in the front passenger seat. Jinbiao's legs went limp with fright. He knew that killing and robbing was a common thing in Blue Town, but that was just hearsay, not something he'd personally experienced. But this time, it was a real gunfight right next to him. If it weren't for Lin Yi's quick reflexes, Jean Biao would have been a dead man by now. Get in the car. What are you waiting for? I'm leaving if you don't. Lin Yi was getting impatient when he saw Jean Biao standing by the car door. Bro, my legs are numb. Can you help me? Jean Biao said carefully, looking like he was on the verge of tears. He didn't want to mess with Lin Yi anymore. The guy was a ruthless one. Not only had he killed a Blue Water leader with one shot, but he'd even managed to escape with an injured girl and himself in the middle of the chaos. Was that something anyone could do? Lin Yi walked over quickly and kicked Jean Biao into the car. He closed the door and went back to the driver's seat, starting up the car and driving away. Not long after Lin Yi left, the Blue Waters caravan moved out. Lin Yi had parked his car in the parking lot of the hotel he was staying at. Yang Chi-Chi had woken up by now. She'd been bleeding nonstop after getting shot in the shoulder, but she'd endured the pain and made her way to the door. Unfortunately for her, the bullet had hit her leg once more, and she'd fallen to the ground the moment she'd been shot. She'd lost a lot of blood before, and the fall had knocked her out, but Yang Chi-Chi's willpower was much stronger than a normal person's. She didn't pass out completely even after losing so much blood. In fact, she was already awake when Lin Yi picked her up, but her emotions were a little complicated. He had saved her once again. She owed him too much. Could he still kill him? And so, Chi-Chi could only pretend that she wasn't awake. Take my room card and go upstairs. Don't let anyone see anything. Lin Yi handed the room card to Jean Biao. I don't care if you die if someone sees through you. Ah, all right. Jean Biao didn't want to go upstairs himself, but he knew that there was no point in wasting his time. Lin Yi wouldn't care about him, and he didn't know what that female assassin had to do with Lin Yi. Since Lin Yi wasn't going to say anything, Jean Biao didn't dare pry. He took the room card and started walking towards the hotel, trembling. Wait, take off your hat. Lin Yi pointed at the blue baseball cap on Jean Biao's head. If he were to put on this hat now, he'd definitely attract the waitress's attention. If the Blue Water really did come here to search, the waitress's mouth might slip, and that'd be bad for them. Yes. Jean Biao quickly took his hat off, evidently thinking of that as well. He felt a wave of fear. It seemed that he wasn't as cautious as Lin Yi. Go up yourself, go in through the back door. Try not to let anyone see you, Lin Yi said faintly. The Blue Water wouldn't know that Jean Biao had been rescued at this point. All their attention was on the female assassin and the traitor, but it was better to be safe than sorry. I understand. I'll be careful. Jean Biao's legs had regained some feeling as well. It was still a little soft, but he didn't dare stay. He was afraid that Lin Yi would really abandon him if he didn't listen to him and leave him here to die. Lin Yi only turned around after Jean Biao entered the hotel. You're not dead, are you? Tell me where you're staying if you're not. Canny Hotel. Chi-Chi's pale face squeezed out a hint of gratitude. Thank you. No need, just don't kill me next time. Lin Yi didn't care at all for the girl's gratitude. Can you turn on the reading light in the car? I want to take the bullet out first. Chi-Chi knew that she'd attract unwanted attention if she went back to the hotel like this. She wanted to take the bullet out first, stop the bleeding, and put on some clothes to cover her body. Wouldn't that attract unwanted attention? Lin Yi was starting to curse. Which master taught you? Why aren't you dead yet, being an assassin? Chi-Chi's face was a little red as she glared at Lin Yi. Don't talk about my master like that. This is only my second mission. My mom said that people grow up through failure. Second time? Lin Yi was speechless. So that was your first time in Songshan? Yeah. Chi-Chi humphed softly and nodded. You? How am I supposed to endure this? Lin Yi was going crazy. I finally know why you're still alive. It's because you met me twice, or you'd be dead already. He had only carried out 2 missions in total and was injured twice. Was there such a stupid assassin? Was there? Lin Yi was speechless. This girl was too strong. She looked cool, but she was a weakling. It's not that bad, just a little unlucky. Chi-Chi lowered her head, embarrassed. I think I'm even more unlucky than you are. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. I really don't know who let you out on a mission. Your social experience is basically 0. Everyone has a time when they're young. How can they be strong without experience? Chi-Chi retorted coolly. All right, I'm unlucky. Where did the bullet hit you? I'll get it for you. Lin, he didn't dare turn on the reading light. That would attract curious people. Right shoulder and left calf. Chi-Chi whispered. Chapter 330. Chapter 330. Never see again, yeah. Chi-Chi nodded. Undress? What are you thinking about? Lin, he glared at the cool girl and barked at her. Undress. Undress? You need more? Chi-Chi wasn't sure what to say. Just open the shoulder. Linny frowned. I've seen what I needed to see last time. I'm not interested in someone who's always trying to kill me. Who cares? A trace of annoyance appeared on Chi-Chi's cool face, but she still pulled her collar down, revealing her snow-white shoulder. There's a bloody hole on her shoulder, especially eye-catching. It was the mark of a bullet. Cut the crap. Lin, he looked at the girl's shoulder and used his dagger to make a light cut. With a flick, a bullet flew out and landed on the car seat. Lin, he took out some herbs he made from his pocket and sprinkled it on the girl's wound. Don't wear your clothes. It'll be fine in a bit. Oh, her wound had miraculously healed under Lin Yi's care, and new flesh had grown out that very night. Chi-Chi trusted Lin Yi's skills very much. Most importantly, it didn't leave any scars. Chi-Chi thought that it was quite miraculous. She was an assassin, and getting injured was a common occurrence. But she was still a girl. She cared about the scars on her skin, and Lin Yi's herbs seemed to be able to remove any scars. He'd prepared this for himself. He'd always bring some with him whenever he went on a mission, but this mission wasn't dangerous at all. He thought that he wouldn't need it, but it turned out that he'd be using it on this cool girl. After dealing with the wound on the girl's shoulder, Lin, he turned to the girl's calves. Chi-Chi had rolled up her pants a long time ago. Lin, he slashed and flicked, and the bullet flew out. He quickly sprinkled some herbs on it, and the bleeding stopped. All right, don't do dangerous things like this again. You're not suited to be an assassin. You're really cool, and you look like a little assassin, but assassins aren't always cool, just like me. Lin, he said seriously to the girl. You. Chi-Chi's eyes went wide. Weren't assassins supposed to be cool? Her mother was always cool at home, cold, and only smiling when she saw her father. All right, I'll send you back. Canny Hotel, right? Lead the way. Lenny didn't give Chi-Chi a chance to say anything as he turned to the driver and started the car. Go straight, then turn right. Chi-Chi could only give Lin directions, a troubled look on her face. Was she really not suited to be an assassin? This big liar must be talking nonsense. Yes, he must be afraid that she'd get stronger and come back to kill him. That had to be it. Linny, huh? Just you wait, I'll surpass you sooner or later. You do remember the way. You're qualified to be an assassin. It was rare for Lin to praise the girl, and Chi-Chi was just about to cheer when Linny said, but you're more suited to be a tour guide or a taxi driver. Chi-Chi was getting pissed off. Wasn't this guy just saying that she wasn't qualified to be an assassin? Had he never failed a mission before? Hey, what are you doing there tonight? Don't tell me you've never failed a mission before. Chi-Chi asked, unsatisfied. I'm going to bring someone out. You've seen him already. Linny didn't hide anything. As for failure, I'm sorry, but I really want to taste it. Bullshit. Chi-Chi's face flashed with suspicion. Hey, that herb of yours is pretty good. Can you give me some? Are you the one who's trying to kill me today? Lin, he looked at the girl, amused, and teased her. Then I'll buy it with money, all right? How much is it? I'll give you the money. Chi-Chi was getting a little embarrassed by Lin Yi's question. I made it myself. It's priceless. Lin, he looked at the girl. But since you have the ring on your finger, I'll give you the remaining half. Lin, he tossed the half bottle of herbs to the cool girl. Thank you. Chi-Chi was pleased. Lin, he was right. This was a priceless treasure. Don't think you can get hurt just because you have this potion. You should just stay at home. Being an assassin doesn't suit you. He got out of the car and bought a set of casual clothes from a convenience store next to the hotel, handing it to the cool girl when he got back. Chi-Chi wanted to retaliate at Lin Yi's insults, but Lin Yi had gotten out of the car. She didn't know what Lin Yi was up to, but Lin Yi was already back. Put it on and go up yourself. Lin Yi said. Chi-Chi wanted to argue with Lin Yi, but seeing how thoughtful Lin Yi was, even buying clothes for her, Chi-Chi felt touched. She couldn't speak anymore. I'm going by. Chi-Chi got out of the car, feeling that the wound on her leg wasn't hurting anymore. It seemed that Lin Yi's herbs were really effective. It'd be best if we don't see each other again. I won't save you if you die next time. So troublesome. Lin Yi waved his hand helplessly and drove off. Chi-Chi stomped her foot on the ground, pissed off, but stomping her foot pulled at her wound, almost causing her to cry out in pain. She didn't dare stomp her foot again and carefully made her way back to the hotel. What Chi-Chi was puzzled. Where was Grandpa Mubei? Didn't he say he was waiting for her in front of the Blue Water HQ? How come she didn't see him when she came out? Plus, why didn't Grandpa Mubei stop her when Lin Yi brought her into the car? In actuality, Chi-Chi really did accuse Tombstone wrongly. Tombstone had been waiting at the factory's entrance the whole time and was about to charge in when he saw that something was wrong when Lin Yi grabbed Chi-Chi and ran out first. After making sure that it was Lin Yi who brought the miss away, Mubei returned to the hotel with peace of mind. After all, Lin Yi was the pride and joy of the organization's leader. With him there, Mubei had nothing to worry about. Chapter 331. A calm response. Lin Yi only remembered that he'd given his room card to Jin Biao when he got back to his room, so he knocked on the door. But there was no response from the room, not even the slightest movement. Lin Yi frowned. See, Jin Biao wasn't back yet? Or was he taken away? Jin Biao, Lin Yi called out. Bro. This time, there was some movement in the room. Then, the door opened, revealing Xie Jin Biao's pale and thin face. The lights in the room weren't even turned on. It was completely dark. Why didn't you turn on the lights? Lin Yi walked in and closed the door behind him. I didn't dare. Someone knocked on the door. I think it was a waiter, but I didn't dare make a sound or turn on the light. I was scared that the blue water would find me and kill me. Jin Biao said weakly. Bro, you're strong. You're not afraid of them, but I'm not. I can't fight them. I'd die if I saw them. So for safety's sake, I pretended that there was no one in the room, just air. Lin Yi was speechless. As powerful as the blue water were in this city, there was no reason for them to search hotel after hotel, room after room. They wouldn't have anything else to do if they did that. Pack up, we're leaving now. Lin Yi wasn't in the mood to stay any longer now that his business was done. Faubert had booked a ticket for tonight, though he could always change it if he couldn't finish the mission tonight. Faubert booked 2 return tickets, one for Lin Yi and the other under Jin Biao's name. Guangbua, on the other hand, was quite thorough in his preparations. He guessed that his son didn't have his ID on him, so he made a new one for Lin Yi. Jin Biao had already showered, but his clothes were a little dirty. He didn't need to prepare much, so he went downstairs with Lin Yi. Jin Biao got into the car from the back while Lin Yi checked out at the front desk. A couple of Blue Water members barged into the lobby just as they were checking out, barking at the front desk. Have you seen 2 Blue Water members with an injured woman in black? No. The waiter was shocked and quickly replied. Lin Yi wasn't afraid of them. However, Lin Yi's hat was pulled down really low back at the repair shop, so they couldn't have seen his face at all. They probably didn't even notice that the girl was an Asian, let alone himself. Lin Yi acted a little scared as he turned to the waiter. Give me the deposit first. I'm leaving. The waitress returned the deposit and ID to Lin Yi, who took them and ran off without a backward glance. The Blue Water members who'd rushed and looked at Lin Yi with disdain. Coward. The other Blue Water members laughed as well. Let's go. Let's go check out the next hotel. Fuck. I don't know who sent an assassin to kill the leader of Charlton, but we're the second leader's men. It's better if he's dead. We can't rest for the next few nights, though. We still have to find the killer. The waiter watched in horror as the Blue Water members left before letting out a sigh of relief. Lin Yi, on the other hand, had long since arrived at the parking lot. He got into his car and headed for the airport. Of the 2 blue caps in the car, one was thrown away, while the other was put on Lin Yi's head. Bro, you Why are you still wearing that hat? Jean Biao jumped in fright. The Blue Water members were looking for him, and Lin, wasn't that unnecessary? Shut up. Lin glared at Jean Biao. Sit still if you don't want to die. Jean Biao didn't dare say anything else, but he was still a little puzzled. His bro wasn't a reckless person, so why was he doing this? The car drove towards the exit of the city, but at the exit, someone had set up a roadblock to stop all the cars leaving the city. Only a small number of cars were allowed to pass, while the rest were all parked there. Some were anxiously waiting for something, while others turned around and went back. Lin, he didn't park his car on the side of the road like the rest, driving straight towards the roadblock. Bro, you're going to charge through the roadblock? There's so many of them. Don't do anything stupid. Jean Biao was starting to get a little scared. Lin, he turned to glare at him coldly, and Jean Biao quickly shut his mouth. Lin, he hadn't let him speak, but now he'd spoken up. He shouldn't have doubted his bro's abilities. He definitely had a way. Jean Biao comforted himself. Stop the car. Lin Yi's car was about to reach the roadblock when the Blue Water members flashed their flashlights at him. Gesturing for him to stop, Lin, he stopped the car, and the Blue Water members surrounded him. Get out. What are you doing? Don't you know the Blue Water is on lockdown? You're from the Blue Water? Raise your head. How come I don't recognize you? Bro, I'd like to ask, what's going on up ahead? Why is the road on lockdown? Lin, he asked carefully. Why are you asking so many questions? I'm asking you. What do you do, and where did you get that hat? The Blue Water member barked at Lin. Bro, I bought this car at the Blue Water's repair shop today, and the hat was a gift from your bro. I bought it from him. He said no one in Blue City would bother me as long as I wore the hat. Lin, he explained carefully. Oh, you said you bought the car from us? The Blue Water member nodded, turning to another Blue Water member not too far away. Boss, there's a guy here saying he bought his car from us, that Yerk sold it to him, and that hat was a gift from him too. Then give Yerk a call. Let him go if he's the one. Arrest him if he's not. The leader was checking other cars and didn't have time to waste with the Blue Water members. He waved his hand and left. Wait a bit then. The Blue Water member's attitude was a lot friendlier now. The person in front of him might be a Blue Water customer, after all. Chapter 332. Chapter 332. Return safely. York and La Z were both members of the Blue Water Mafia, but there were thousands of them in the Mafia. They'd only met each other briefly, that was all. But they all knew of this person's existence. There's something I'd like to confirm with you. There's a guy who said he bought a car from you today, wearing a baseball cap with the Blue Water logo. Do you know him? La Z asked. Oh, there's indeed such a person, a tourist from the East. I sold him an old Santana. If it's him, there should be no problem. Yerk thought about it and said, Why don't you give him the phone? I'll confirm it again. Sure. La Z thought that it was better to be safe than sorry, so he passed the phone to Linny. You talk to York. York, bro, it's me. Linny said with a wide smile. Well, I just bought a car and was about to drive it back, didn't I? But I got stopped at the city gates. I don't know what's going on. Oh, it's you. All right, no problem. Give the phone to La Z. I'll talk to him. York was relieved after confirming that it was indeed the guy who'd bought the car. All right. Lin, he handed the phone back to La Z. York, bro, wants to talk to you. La Z took the phone and said a few words before nodding to Lin. All right, you can go now. I'm La Z. You can look for me if you want a car in the future. La Z was starting to get business. No problem, La Z, bro. Linny nodded. Look for you to buy a car? Maybe in my next life. He got back in the car, and the driver let him off without a hitch as he sped out of Blue City. Jean Biao, sitting in the passenger seat, was dumbfounded. They'd let him go just like that? There were so many cars around, and they wouldn't let him go. Lin, he had said a few words, and all he had to do was answer a phone call. Of course, Jean Biao had learned his lesson and didn't dare to ask any random questions. Lin, he didn't bother explaining. He'd seen the Blue Water members looking for someone in the hotel, and he'd expected to see them at the exit as well. He'd put on the Blue Water hat and come up with an excuse, using York's name to get out of the city. Linny took off his hat and tossed it out after leaving the city. It was no longer useful outside Blue Water territory, and it'd be even more troublesome if someone misunderstood. Arriving at the airport unimpeded, Lin Yi directly left the car in the airport parking lot, not even taking out the key. Let's go. Do you still want to stay here? Lin Yi saw Xie Jinbiao looking at the airport in a trance, and immediately scolded him. And no, bro, I'm just looking at this sad place. Who knows? I might never come back here again. Jinbiao sighed as he followed Lin Yi into the airport. The plane soared into the sky. Along the way, Xie Jinbiao was silent. No one knew what he was thinking, but as they were changing planes in Beijing, Xie Jinbiao carefully asked, "Big brother, how much did my dad give you all of his assets?" Lin Yi replied faintly, "He'll be left with nothing after you go back." Oh, Jinbiao nodded. He was a bit depressed, but didn't say anything. As far as he was concerned, the price was very reasonable. Lin Yi's skills were worth the price. His entire family's assets didn't even add up to 100 million USD, so he'd gotten the better end of the deal. Otherwise, his father would be in a lot of debt. Jinbiao's attitude surprised Lin Yi. He didn't cry or make a fuss, and he seemed to have accepted the fact. Did this guy learn? In fact, after this thrilling experience, Jinbiao also figured out some things. When he had money, he was a rich kid, but when he had no money, he was nothing. The plane landed safely on the ground, and they were home. Lin Yi didn't feel anything, but Jinbiao was emotional, and his body was trembling with excitement. Are you addicted to drugs? Lin Yi glanced at him. No, I'm just a little excited. I've quit. Jinbiao was a little embarrassed. Quit? Lin Yi was stunned. This kid can quit drugs? I was locked up for 2 months. Who would give me drugs if I had no money? It was quite uncomfortable at first, but I got over it later. Jinbiao explained with some embarrassment. Lin Yi nodded and didn't say anything. In a situation like Jinbiao's, it was possible for him to quit drugs completely, but he was afraid that he'd be addicted to drugs again in the future. However, this wasn't Lin Yi's responsibility. Lin Yi brought him back, so he fulfilled his promise. At the airport, Faubert's car didn't come and pick them up. Lin Yi didn't tell him the exact time of his return. The ticket could be changed, so the time of his return depended on whether Lin Yi's mission was successful or not. After leaving the airport, Lin Yi flagged down a taxi and got in with Jinbiao. Go to Qianhua Waterfront District, Lin Yi ordered the taxi driver. Okay. The taxi driver nodded and started the car. It was a little strange. Lin Yi was wearing ordinary clothes, but the kid in the back looked like he escaped from a refugee camp. His clothes were tattered, and he was skinny like a heavy smoker. These two people are going to Qianhua Waterfront? That's where the rich live. He didn't ask anything. After all, he was the one collecting the fare. Who cared what they were doing there? Jinbiao hadn't been back in China for a few years. His eyes were filled with excitement as he looked at the streets of Songshan. He was even more excited now that he was almost home. Lin Yi paid the fare and got off the car with Jinbiao, walking towards Area F. Guanghua hadn't been to the company for the past 2 days. He'd said that he had a bad cold and was resting at home. This made Gu Bong, who'd been ready to make things difficult for Pingzhan, very troubled. Why did Xie Guanghua fall sick at this critical moment when the board meeting was about to be held? Gu Bong went to Guanghua's villa to visit him once, but Guanghua looked really haggard. Gu Bong didn't suspect that Guanghua was faking it. In actuality, Guanghua didn't have a cold. The reason he looked haggard was because he was worried about his son's safety. He'd seen Lin Yi's skills, but as the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands, especially in a foreign country where he wasn't familiar with. It was a difficult thing to bring his son back, no matter how you looked at it. Chapter 333. Chapter 333. Don't mess with him, ding dong. The doorbell rang, and Guanghua frowned tiredly. Could it be that Jin Gubong couldn't wait any longer and was here again? He'd just been here yesterday. Guanghua didn't want to see Gubong, but he still ordered the housekeeper to open the door for him. She blinked as the door opened, staring at the person in disbelief. Why, you're the young master? Wang Ma stared at the skinny Jinbiao, too shocked to speak. Wasn't this a little too frightening? Wang Ma, it's me. Jean Biao was quite emotional as well. Guangma had been very young when he'd left, but her hair had turned white in the blink of an eye. Guangbo had been pretending to be sick on the sofa, thinking that it was Jean Gubong. He jumped up when he heard his son's voice. Son, you're back? Dad. Jean Biao was quite emotional as well. He'd been living a carefree life abroad, but it was only now that he was home that he truly felt the best. All right, you two can catch up later. Where's my shares? He would be lying if he said he wasn't touched by the father-son relationship, but he didn't feel any pity for them. Jean Biao had been a complete black sheep of the family. It was the father's fault for not teaching his son properly. Guangbo had been so busy making money that he hadn't had the time to discipline his son. He'd thought that he'd be able to save up a fortune for his son, but in the end, it was all for naught. Guangbo was quite happy that his son was back, but hesitated when he remembered that he'd given all his shares to Lin Yi. He'd be left with nothing after that. It didn't matter if he didn't have any money, but would his son be able to live a poor life? He'd given all his money and shares to Lin Yi because he'd been worried about his son's safety, but now that his son was back, he couldn't help but worry. Many people were like that. Once they had something, they'd want to have it again. They'd always be greedy and unwilling. He really didn't want to give his shares to Lin Yi right now. Mr. Lin, what do you think about this? I'll transfer half of my shares to you unconditionally and leave the other half to Jean Biao. I promise he won't support Jean Gubong. Guangbo said after some hesitation. Lin Yi frowned. This guy had learned to go back on his word. It was good enough that he didn't ask for all of his assets, but he still wanted to play this game with him? Just as Lin Yi was about to curse, Jean Biao spoke first. Dad, don't talk nonsense. You should give this big brother what you deserve. Don't mess with him, I don't want to die. Jean Biao almost fell to the ground when he heard his father's words. Lin Yi's display of power in the Blue Water HQ was still fresh in his mind. Jean Biao was afraid that Lin Yi would kill him if he wasn't happy. Jean Biao. You. Guangbo was stunned. He had risked his life to keep some shares, but wasn't it for his son? But why didn't her son want it? Dad, just give it to this big brother. It's good enough that I came back alive. Jean Biao had been through life and death, and he'd truly experienced the terror of death. He didn't want to be targeted by someone even scarier than Lin Yi anymore. All right, I don't need those shares if you don't want them. Guangbo nodded and raised his head to look at Lin Yi. I'm sorry, I was being greedy. I was thinking that you could take my life any time you wanted, Mr. Lin, but I didn't think that. Never mind. I'll get the documents for you right away. I'll transfer all the shares under my name to you. Guangbo went upstairs and took out the documents he'd prepared beforehand, signing the transfer agreement with Lin Yi. I don't need the villa. You guys can stay here. Lin Yi looked at Jean Biao. All right, I'm leaving. You guys continue reminiscing. Lin Yi found a public phone after leaving Guangbo's villa and called Pingzhan. Hello, how are you? Guangbo was feeling uneasy, and so was Pingzhan. He hadn't heard from Lin Yi for the past 2 days, and he couldn't even focus on his documents. His phone rang, and he picked it up. It was an unfamiliar number. He didn't want to pick it up at first, but he did after some hesitation. Uncle Chu? I'm Lin Yi. Lin Yi's voice sounded from the other side of the phone. Pingzhan was overjoyed. He'd been thinking about Lin Yi all this time, and the fact that Lin Yi was calling put him at ease. Pingzhan didn't really care if they could save Jean Biao or not, as long as Lin Yi was safe. But the number was from Songshan, and Pingzhan found it odd. Was it a long-distance connection? Lin Yi, where are you? Are you all right? Pingzhan asked. I'm fine. I just came back, and I'm on my way to your company now. Are you there? Lin Yi asked. I'm here, where are you? I'll get Li Fu to pick you up. Pingzhan said, relieved that Lin Yi was already back in Songshan. It's fine, I'll take a taxi. Lin Yi said. All right, I'll wait for you in my office. Pingzhan didn't insist after listening to Lin Yi. After all, Lin Yi was already back in Songshan, and there was no danger. Lin Yi flagged down a taxi and headed straight to Pingzhan Industries. There wasn't any traffic during the day, and it took less than 10 minutes for Lin Yi to arrive at the gates of Pingzhan Industries. Lin Yi had come to Pingzhan Industries a couple of times already, and the security guard at the gates had quite an impression of Lin Yi after what happened last time. He welcomed Lin Yi with a smile. Lin Yi nodded and went straight to Pingzhan's office. He knocked on the door, and Faubert was standing inside. "Mr. Lin, you're here. Mr. Chu is waiting for you inside." Faubert was a little surprised to see Lin Yi. Peng Zhan had told him that Lin Yi was back, but Faubert still couldn't believe it. It hadn't even been 2 days, and Lin Yi had already brought Xie Jinbiao back. But where was Xie Jinbiao? Had he failed the mission? But Faubert didn't ask too much since Peng Zhan was there. Peng Zhan would find out everything in detail. Peng Zhan stood up to greet Lin Yi personally, showing how much he valued Lin Yi. "I was worried before, but it looks like you're fine." "That's great." "Ah, Uncle Chu, didn't I say it before? It's just a small matter." Lin Yi shrugged with a smile. Chapter 334. New shareholder. "I brought him back, but I've already sent him home." Lin Yi said, "That kid is as timid as a mouse and as thin as a stick. Return him to his father as soon as possible. Don't let him die on the road, oh?" Peng Zhan was overjoyed after hearing Lin Yi's words. "You sent him home already? That's great. I didn't expect it. Lil Yi, you my lucky star. Ever since you came, all the troubles on my side have been easily resolved." Uncle Chu, don't let your guard down. Jean Gubong's just a clown at the front desk. The people behind him are the key." Lin Yi reminded. "Siwa's just a spokesperson. I know, but they have been plotting against my Peng Zhan Industries for a long time. If there wasn't a mole working with them, they wouldn't have succeeded. I almost got tricked by that old geezer, Jean Gubong, this time. I'll teach him a lesson." Peng Zhan nodded, smiling coldly. Naturally, he knew that a tall tree would attract the wind, but if all the shareholders were to stick together, there wouldn't be a chance for outsiders to take advantage of them. "Since Uncle Chu knows, I won't say anymore." Lin Yi wasn't interested in the company at all. "You're too kind, Uncle Chu. I think we shouldn't let Gubong stay in the company after this is over. Make him give up his shares and get the hell out of here. This time, I won't let a tiger grow in my bosom again." Peng Zhan sighed. "I used to close one eye because of my parents, but now the company has reached a point where it has to be reorganized. Don't worry, Uncle Chu won't cause you any more trouble." Peng Zhan sighed. "It's not really trouble. My old man told me to come here to listen to my employer's orders." Lin Yi said with a smile, embarrassed. He'd put a lot of effort into this mission, and he was looking forward to retiring in one go. "By the way, what did Guanghua say? He won't be supporting Jean Gubong anymore, will he?" Peng Zhan asked the question he was most concerned about after the small talk. "Of course not. You've given me all the shares," Lin Yi said as he handed Guanghua's shares over to Peng Zhan. "This is the contract I signed with him. We just need to sign a new one, and it'll be under your name." Peng Zhan was taken aback. He didn't think that Lin Yi would be able to get his hands on Guanghua's shares. He had heard Lin Yi mention this before, but he didn't take it seriously. Although Xie Guanghua had no desires, the only thing he couldn't let go of was his son. How could he give away all the shares in his hands? As far as Peng Zhan was concerned, Guanghua would rather die than leave something for his son. "He really gave you the shares?" Peng Zhan was pleasantly surprised. His original plan was for Guanghua to team up with him against Jean Gubong, but Lin Yi had surprised him even more. He wasn't worried that Guanghua would betray him this time because he had nothing to do with the company anymore. "But the shares will be under your name. You deserve them. You got them with your own abilities. How can I take them back?" Lin Yi didn't say anything. Peng Zhan waved his hand, rejecting Lin Yi's shares. "Me?" Lin Yi paused. He didn't expect Peng Zhan to give him the shares. "That's part of your reward, I guess." "Ha!" Peng Zhan smiled. "All right, there's no need to say so much. You should keep this for yourself. But now, I need you to help me with something." "What is it?" Lin Yi asked. "Just tell me what you need, Uncle Chu." Lin Yi didn't think about keeping the shares for himself. After all, Lin Yi knew who was good to him and who wasn't. If it were Lu Tiany's family, Lin Yi might have asked for a commission as well. Peng Zhan, however, didn't need to do that. Shareholder meeting. Peng Zhan smiled. "Li Fu, go inform the board that we're having a shareholder meeting right away. I want to introduce the company's third largest shareholder to them." "Yes, Mr. Chu." Faubert nodded and left. Even the usually calm Faubert couldn't help but want to laugh. He wanted to see what kind of expression Gubong would have when he learned that Guangbua had given all his shares to Lin Yi. Gubong was puzzled. Peng Zhan was calling for a shareholder meeting? Was there something wrong with him? For the past few days, Peng Zhan had been looking for excuses to reject the meeting. So why was he calling for one today? Could it be that he'd gotten through Guangbua's plan? Or was he preparing a new move? Guangbua shouldn't be at work today, right? Why was there a shareholder meeting if the company's third largest shareholder wasn't here? Despite his confusion, Gubong still arrived at the meeting punctually. He had at least put on a show. There were more people in the shareholder meeting than the board of directors, and some of the smaller shareholders would attend as well. Gubong nodded to the shareholders he was familiar with before taking the seat to Peng Zhan's left. This was the seat he'd been sitting in all this time, the symbol of being the company's second largest shareholder. The seat to Peng Zhan's right was Guangbua's. Gubong frowned when he realized that there was no one at Guangbua's seat. Could it be that Peng Zhan was trying to bypass Guangbua and call the meeting? But if the third largest shareholder wasn't here, he wouldn't be able to hold the meeting. Time passed by, and soon, 10 minutes had passed since Faubert's notice. Gubong's face was dark as he sat in his seat, not moving an inch. He couldn't figure out what Peng Zhan was up to. Was he just calling all the shareholders here to cause a scene? Gubong was deep in thought when the meeting room went silent all of a sudden. He raised his head to see Li Fu walking in. This was the prelude to Peng Zhan's arrival, and Faubert would always be there first, setting up the documents and setting up the teacups for Peng Zhan. It wasn't long before Peng Zhan walked in with a young man by his side. The other shareholders didn't pay much attention to him, assuming that he was Peng Zhan's new secretary, but Gubong's eyes narrowed. Lin Yi. How could Gubong not know this person? The man who'd ruined his plans time and time again. Gubong wanted to tear him to pieces. But what surprised Gubong? What was he doing here? Chapter 335. Chapter 335. Shocking news. Peng Zhan spoke up just as Gubong was wondering what was going on. All right, everyone quiet. We're calling for a shareholders meeting. Chairman Chu, isn't that against the rules? The third largest shareholder of the company, Mr. Xie Guangbua, isn't here right now. Gubong objected to Peng Zhan's suggestion. Even if there's something wrong with his body, he should have sent a representative. I suspect that you're purposely avoiding Mr. Xie to call for this meeting. Gubong's words were a little impatient, but since he decided to go all out with Peng Zhan, there was no need for him to hold back anymore. Impatience was better than Peng Zhan coming up with some dirty tricks. Haha, calm down, Vice Chairman Jean. The reason I'm calling for this meeting is to talk about Mr. Xie Guangbua. Peng Zhan didn't seem to mind at all as he looked at Gubong and nodded calmly. Gubong felt as if he'd punched into cotton. He'd thought that Peng Zhan would try his best to avoid his question, and that he'd be able to find a way to use the fact that Guangbua wasn't at the meeting to stop Peng Zhan from calling for the meeting. Yet, Peng Zhan had answered his question so casually, and he'd made it very clear that the purpose of the meeting was Guangbua's matter. All right, I'd like to hear the details. Gubong could only keep his anger bottled up in his belly, unable to vent it out. He shut his mouth after that, but he'd like to see what Peng Zhan could come up with. Could Peng Zhan be saying that Guangbua had given Peng Zhan full authority to represent him? That didn't seem possible, and Peng Zhan wouldn't come up with something so childish. Mr. Lin Yi, please take a seat. Peng Zhan wouldn't call Lin Yi in a formal setting, especially during a shareholders meeting. He'd have to call Lin Yi by his full name, since Lin Yi was a shareholder of the company now. In private, it was fine to call him whatever he wanted, but in front of others, he couldn't let Lin Yi appear here as a junior. Peng Zhan gestured for Lin Yi to sit down, pointing at Guangbua's usual spot. Lin Yi nodded and was about to sit down when Gubong stopped him. Wait, kid, don't sit down yet. Gubong objected immediately when he saw that Lin Yi was going to take Guangbua's seat. Chairman Chu, what do you mean by this? Are you saying that this kid can represent Director Xie? But I remember that he is your daughter's bodyguard, right? Gubong's words made the other board members look at Lin Yi, unsure if Gubong was telling the truth. Bodyguard? Peng Zhan chuckled. Lin Yi is indeed a good friend of my daughter Meng Yao, but it's not wrong to say that he's her bodyguard, flower protector. Peng Zhan's explanation made the board members understand what he meant. Peng Zhan was saying that Lin Yi was his daughter's boyfriend. It wouldn't be wrong to say that he was a bodyguard. A flower protector was a bodyguard. Flower protector? Gubong hmphed coldly. Bodyguard or flower protector, I don't care what he does. I like to ask Chairman Xu, why is he here at the shareholders meeting? And why is he sitting in Director Xie's seat? Are you trying to tell me that this is Director Xie's idea? Or is someone trying to use his position for personal gain? Are you retarded? I think you've eaten too many retarded pills, just like that idiot Guanghua. Lin, he didn't wait for Peng Zhan to speak. You're asking me why I'm sitting here? I'd like to ask you why you're sitting here. Who the hell are you? Director Xie's idea? Does that idiot Guanghua have the right to send me here? Who the hell is he? He's just a little bit stronger than you. I'm a shareholder of the company, one of the 3 biggest shareholders. Why can't I sit here? Gubong was pissed off by Lin Yi's words. Since when was he ever called an idiot? Lin Yi, on the other hand, was insulting him in front of so many people. Gubong was starting to get pissed off. Chairman Xu, I'd like to ask, someone like this is allowed to attend the shareholders meeting? Why does he have to do that? And he dares to insult the shareholders. Security? Where are the security guards? Kick him out. The other shareholders were looking at Lin Yi, confused. Even if he was Peng Zhan's son-in-law, he couldn't be this arrogant, could he? Gubong was the second biggest shareholder, second only to Peng Zhan. Only Peng Zhan and Guanghua had the guts to go against him like this. The other smaller shareholders didn't even have a right to do so. But you're only Peng Zhan's son-in-law, not Peng Zhan. Isn't it a bit too much to insult a shareholder like this? If you dare insult the second biggest shareholder of the company, then wouldn't we, the smaller shareholders, be at your mercy? Peng Zhan spoke up just as everyone was looking at Lin Yi with disdain. Vice Chairman Jean, Mr. Lin Yi is now the new shareholder of the company, the biggest shareholder other than you and me. Peng Zhan's words caused an uproar in the room. Everyone looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. Wasn't the 3rd biggest shareholder Xie Guanghua? How did it become Lin Yi? Gubong paused as he looked at Peng Zhan in disbelief before turning to Lin Yi. How is this possible? This is impossible. Peng Zhan, what are you trying to do? Gubong was going crazy at this point. He didn't believe Peng Zhan's words at all. It was simply too ridiculous. The 3rd biggest shareholder of the company was Xie Guanghua. How could it be Lin Yi? I don't have time for your bullshit. Here's the transfer document. Take a look. Lin Yi tossed out a document casually. It was the transfer agreement signed by Guanghua. Gubong grabbed the document and started reading it, glaring at Peng Zhan savagely after he was done. Impossible. I don't believe it. You guys made this up. Why would Xie Guanghua give his shares to you? And for free at that? Is he retarded? Gubong used the word retarded in a fit of rage. You'll know if I'm retarded or not with a phone call. Lin Yi curled his lips as he looked at Gubong, as if he was an idiot. Chapter 336. Hope shattered in an instant. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Gubong was still talking to himself as he took out his phone. In actuality, as an old acquaintance of Guanghua's, he knew very well how Guanghua's signature looked and how he stamped it. From the surface, it didn't look like a forgery. Moreover, Peng Zhan wouldn't do something like this. It was pointless. Even if he managed to gain the upper hand in a shareholder meeting, the moment Guanghua appeared, the scheme would fall apart on its own. Peng Zhan, on the other hand, would be labeled as dishonest and deceiving the shareholders. It wasn't worth it at all, as far as Gubong was concerned. However, Guanghua giving his shares to Lin Yi for free was even more impossible. Was Guanghua an idiot? His son was still in the hands of a foreign mafia, and his son owed a huge amount of money to the loan sharks. He'd be dead if he didn't pay it back. Guanghua's only option was to keep his shares in order to cooperate with Gubong, and that was his only way out. Giving his shares to Lin Yi at a time like this wouldn't help him in any way. He dialed Guanghua's phone, only to find it turned off. Gubong didn't mind, however, since Guanghua's phone had been turned off for the past 2 days. Gubong dialed the landline in Guanghua's villa once more. Someone picked up after a while, but it wasn't Guanghua. It was an unfamiliar man's voice. "Hello, who are you looking for?" "I'm looking for Mr. Guanghua. May I know if he's here?" Gubong asked. "Oh, you're looking for my dad? Hold on, I'll go get him." It was Jin Biao who picked up the phone. Guanghua was very happy today. His son was home, and he was preparing to cook his son's favorite dishes. In actuality, while Guanghua had given all his shares to Lin Yi, he still had some real estate left. There were more than 10 houses in Songshan, along with some antiques and jewelry. He'd be able to sell them all for tens of millions of yuan, and it was more than enough to start a small business. Giving his shares to Lin, he made him feel more relaxed. His days of starting a business with his son were the happiest days of his life. Wait, Guanghua is your dad? You? Who are you?" Gubong's face was filled with shock. "I'm his son, Xie Jinbiao. What's wrong? Who are you?" Xie Jinbiao thought to himself, "Is this person an idiot? If I call him dad, who do you think I am? You? Weren't you captured by a foreign gang? Why are you home?" Gubong asked in disbelief. "Who are you? How did you know I was captured?" Jin Biao frowned. "Did you call to make trouble?" "No, I'm your dad's colleague," Gubong said, feeling that something was amiss. Why were there so many weird things happening today? Xie Guanghwa's son had returned safely, but Xie Guanghwa's shares had fallen into the hands of Lin Yi. "My dad is here, you talk to him." Hearing that he was his father's colleague, Xie Jinbiao resisted the urge to scold him. Why was this guy so rude? Now that he was captured, he couldn't come back. After a while, Xie Guanghwa's voice came through the phone. "Hello, I'm Xie Guanghwa." "Old Xie, I'm old Jean." Gubong forced a smile. "Was it your son?" "He's back. He's back. What's up?" Guanghwa's warm voice was no longer there, replaced by a cold, perfunctory tone. "If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. I'm cooking for my son." "Wait, Pengzhan's having a shareholder meeting. Do you know about this?" Gubong wasn't about to let Guanghua hang up. He quickly asked, "What does this have to do with me? I've already given my shares to someone else." Guanghua said impatiently, "All right, I'm hanging up if there's nothing else. Bye." Beep, beep, beep. Gubong's phone rang a couple of times before the screen said, "Call ended." Gubong was dumbfounded, completely dumbfounded. He breathed heavily, not knowing what to do. He'd thought that he was going to become the chairman a few minutes ago, but this phone call was like a bolt from the blue that struck him like a bolt of lightning. It was over, it was all over. Gubong knew that he had no chance of becoming the chairman now. What a joke. The first and third shareholders of the company were family now. What the hell was he supposed to do? I'm afraid that those small shareholders who previously sided with me will no longer side with me if they see this situation now. It was obvious that Pengzhan and Lin Yi's side would be the strongest in the shareholder meetings in the future. There was no way he could win against them. His hope was shattered in an instant. Gubong didn't want to know how Lin Yi had gotten Guanghwa's shares anymore. It was pointless. The only thing he could do now was think of a way to protect himself. Gubong was certain that Pengzhan wouldn't go easy on him next. So whether or not he could become the chairman was secondary. Whether or not he could stay in the company was another matter altogether. Gubong smashed the phone in his hand onto the ground, shattering it into pieces. Gubong smashed his phone on the floor and stood up, walking out of the meeting room without a backward glance. His face was dark and gloomy. Pengzhan didn't mind it at all. It was normal for Gubong to react like this. Pengzhan didn't mind at all. In fact, it was quite satisfying. Pengzhan had wanted to smash his phone when Gubong and Guanghua were singing the same tune. The purpose of this meeting is to introduce our new shareholder, Mr. Lin Yi. Pengzhan smiled as he introduced Lin Yi to the other shareholders. The meeting room was filled with a round of applause. They weren't idiots. This person was the third largest shareholder of the company, and he had an intimate relationship with Pengzhan's daughter. They wouldn't dare offend someone like that. Besides, no one doubted that Lin Yi was using Gubong's name to intimidate others. After all, Lin Yi had the right to be arrogant. He was the third largest shareholder of the company. Please take care of me. Lin Yi stood up and nodded to everyone. Next, I would like to propose that Lin Yi be a member of the company's board of directors. Please vote. Peng Zhan suggested. With Gu Bong gone, who would want to offend Peng Zhan for him? And so, without a doubt, Lin Yi became the new director of the company. Gu Bong's vote didn't matter anymore. Chapter 337. Chapter 337. Two paths. Lin Yi didn't need to get involved in how Peng Zhan dealt with Gu Bong. If Peng Zhan still couldn't take care of Gu Bong under these circumstances, then Lin Yi would really have to wonder if he had the ability to manage a company at all. Gu Bong went back to his office. He'd never felt so defeated before, and he'd finally gotten a taste of it today. Gu Bong had always wanted to replace Peng Zhan, and with Guangbu's support, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. But the situation at the shareholders' meeting today had told him that it was all but a passing cloud. He had nothing left. He'd thought that with Guangbu's support, his position as chairman was already in the bag. He'd completely fallen out with Peng Zhan, to the point where there was no turning back. Gu Bong didn't believe that Peng Zhan would let him go, and he'd use this opportunity to crush him. After some hesitation, Gu Bong dialed up Sihua's phone. There was no point talking to Yuchu about this anymore, so he had to discuss it with Sihua. Hello? Vice Chairman Jean? How's it going? I heard from Lil Yuchu that you're about to take control of the company? Sihua said. Master Bing's coming to Songshan in a couple of days. You'll be rewarded handsomely with this gift of yours. I'm sorry, Sihua bro. Gu Bong said carefully. There's been some changes. Changes? Sihua paused, his voice darkening. What changes? I don't know what's going on with that director I'm working with, but he suddenly transferred his shares to Lin Yi. Gu Bong said. Lin Yi and that old fox Peng Zhan are working together, and I can't control the board of directors anymore. They're going to make a move on me soon. So you're saying that the real estate company we're gifting to Master Bing is going to fall through? Sihua's voice grew colder. I'm afraid so. Gu Bong smiled helplessly. Damn it. Are you playing with me? I've done so many things for you, and I've lost 2 golden class masters because of it. Are you telling me to just let it go? Sihua hemphed coldly. Jean Gu Bong, do you have a death wish? Sihua bro, I'm sorry. Please don't be angry. Gu Bong said, startled. Gu Bong wouldn't have cared if someone else had said that to him, but Sihua could kill him with a snap of his fingers. Sihua, on the other hand, could kill him with ease. It wasn't a joke. Sihua had the ability to do so, and no one would stand up for him after he died. You're not angry? Why don't you think about how angry Master Bing will be? Sihua cursed. Master Bing's angry. I'm done for. I'm telling you, Jean Gu Bong, you have to give me the real estate company whether you want or not. Otherwise, bear the consequences yourself. Sihua bro. Unfortunately, Sihua hung up with a bang before Gu Bong could finish. Gu Bong pushed the phone off his desk, sending it crashing to the floor. Gu Bong was pissed as well, but he didn't dare vent it on Sihua. What kind of person was Sihua? He was someone who had his way with both the black and white sides of Songshan, and his boss was even more powerful. Gu Bong couldn't afford to piss off someone like that. Peng Zhan, you're forcing me into a dead end. If you push me too far, I'll take you down with me. I'll blow you up with a bomb. Gu Bong said hatefully, but he was just saying that. Gu Bong was actually very afraid of death. His embezzlement in the company would only result in jail if Peng Zhan found out, but his life would be forfeit if Sihua were to get angry. Gu Bong had to think of a plan as soon as possible, or his life would truly be a tragedy. Of course, that was just the beginning. Peng Zhan called him in for a talk before he could come up with a plan. Gu Bong knew that Peng Zhan was looking for him for no good reason, and as much as he didn't want to go, he didn't have a choice. He couldn't help but sigh as he made his way to Peng Zhan's office. Faubert was standing at the door with a smile on his face. Mr. Chu is waiting for you inside. Vice Chairman Jean. Got it. Gu Bong waved his hand weakly as he walked into Peng Zhan's office. He wanted to use Sihua's help to turn things around, but now it seemed that Sihua wasn't killing him at all. Help! Dream on. Vice Chairman Jean, please have a seat. Peng Zhan pointed at the sofa beside the desk. Gu Bong looked as if he'd aged 10 years all of a sudden. He looked at Peng Zhan with a tired expression before plopping down on the sofa. Peng Zhan, just say what you want. Don't beat around the bush. Gu Bong couldn't be bothered to play mind games with Peng Zhan. There was no need for it anymore. He still had to deal with Sihua after dealing with Peng Zhan. Besides, he wasn't Peng Zhan's opponent at all. What was the point of this stalemate? He might as well just say what he wanted and see what Peng Zhan wanted. All right, I'll be direct if that's the case, Vice Chairman Jean. Peng Zhan nodded. I'll give you two options. First, I'll investigate how much money you've made from the company and send you to court. Tell me the second option, Peng Zhan. Gu Bong wasn't an idiot. He knew that this wasn't a choice he'd made after hearing Peng Zhan's words, since it wouldn't benefit anyone. Second option, give me your shares, and I'll let bygones be bygones. Peng Zhan said faintly. Peng Zhan, don't go overboard. My shares are worth a couple $100 million, no matter what. You're going back just like that? Gu Bong stood up all of a sudden, glaring at Peng Zhan. The money you've made from the company all these years should be around that number, right? Even if it's not a couple $100 million, it's at least 1 or 200 million. Peng Zhan smiled. How many years would 200 million put you in prison? Compared to the shares, you choose. Give me another 100 million. Gu Bong said after some hesitation. Peng Zhan, on the other hand, was just asking for a ridiculous price. He humphed when he heard Gu Bong. 50 million, 80 million, Gu Bong said. Chapter 338. It worked. The first option Peng Zhan had given Gu Bong was just to scare him off. There was no real benefit to Peng Zhan if he really did find the evidence and put Gu Bong in jail for the rest of his life. Plus, even if the evidence was found, there was no guarantee that it would be of any use. How long would a lawsuit take? It was better to go with the second option. As long as Gu Bong wasn't an idiot, he'd definitely choose the second option. As expected, Gu Bong didn't disappoint Peng Zhan. All right, 80 million it is then. It's a deal. Gu Bong wasn't in the mood to haggle with Peng Zhan. He had more important things to attend to. With this 80 million, he'd be able to start a small real estate company as compensation for masturbating. Sihua wouldn't bother him any more then, would he? Gu Bong felt like he'd lost two birds with one stone. Not only did he lose his position as chairman, but he'd also be forced to leave the company. He'd lost his shares in exchange for 80 million, and that 80 million might not even be his own. He'd have to give it to masturbating. Gu Bong wouldn't mind fighting Peng Zhan head-on if Sihua were still supporting Gu Bong. He wasn't afraid of Peng Zhan at all with Sihua's support, but Gu Bong didn't have the time to fight with Peng Zhan now that Sihua was ready to kill him. Gu Bong didn't have the energy to fight with Peng Zhan right now. He'd better take the money and leave. That afternoon, Gu Bong completed his resignation procedures and handed over his shares to Peng Zhan. He left Peng Zhan Industries under the shocked and mocking gazes of the other shareholders with the 80 million in his retirement fund. Vice Chairman Jean had become a part of Peng Zhan Industries' history. He'd no longer be a part of the board of directors from now on. The shareholders and directors who'd wanted to stand on Gu Bong's side were all shocked. It was lucky that they hadn't gotten involved with Gu Bong. Otherwise, they'd be done for. They'd seen how powerful Gu Bong was back then, working with the third largest shareholder, Xie Guangbua, in preparation for the Operation Chu. But what had happened? Guangbua's shares had gone to Peng Zhan's son-in-law for no reason at all, and Gu Bong's shares had been taken back by Peng Zhan. Right now, Peng Zhan Industries was under Chu Peng Zhan's control. Most of the company's shares were in his hands. Meng Yao and Yushu were enjoying themselves when Lin Yi wasn't home. Oh, I can finally walk around the house naked, Yushu said as she curled up on the sofa, watching TV. Yushu often took off all her clothes the moment she got home, saying that wearing clothes would affect her body's growth. Ahem, Shu, you need to be mindful of your image. Even if Lin Yi's not home, what if Faubert comes? Meng Yao said helplessly. Every time Faubert comes, he knocks on the door. He won't come in casually. Yushu, on the other hand, didn't seem to mind at all. She was still showing off her body to Meng Yao on the sofa. Yao Yao, what do you think of my body recently? Stop showing off your boobs in front of me. I'll cut them off if you keep showing them off. Meng Yao glared at Yushu. Did she think she could show off her body just because she had a good figure? Why don't you say you're not as tall as me? You got all the nutrients in your boobs, and I've got all the nutrients in my bones. Oh, I'm not showing off. Yushu sat back on the sofa, depressed. Why didn't anyone praise her body? Seriously, she couldn't just show it to anyone. Not even Meng Yao, who was the only one she could look at. Yushu felt helpless. Go show off to your shield, bro. I'm not interested in you. Go away, I won't watch TV. Meng Yao said as she looked at Yushu disdainfully. You're showing off here and there. Aren't you just going to let other men touch you? Oh, I want to, but I'm afraid you won't agree, Yao Yao. Yushu said as she looked at Meng Yao. Why wouldn't I agree? Meng Yao didn't want to talk to Yushu anymore. You're the main wife, so the main wife gets priority. You should be the one showing off first. I'll have to wait behind you. Yushu said with a grin. Meng Yao glared at Yushu. Can't you calm down a little? I've noticed that you're the most obedient when Lin Yi's at home. I've finally realized the benefits of having Lin Yi at home. Oh, Yao Yao, you miss Shield Bro too? Yushu blinked as if she'd discovered a new continent. She waved her hands around on the sofa as she asked, What do I miss? Meng Yao said, a little annoyed. I just wanted to come back soon, so you can have some peace. I can't take it anymore. I've been holding it in for 10 years. Meng Yao realized that she was at the end of her patience, especially since Lin Yi had been staying at her house for a while. Meng Yao had gotten used to Yushu's behavior, and now that Lin Yi was gone, Yushu was back to normal. Meng Yao prayed that Lin Yi would come back soon. Ka! The door to the villa was open from the outside. Wah? Meng Yao's eyes went wide as she looked at the door in shock. No way. Her prayers had come true this quickly. Lin Yi was back. Her dreams had come true. Yushu was stunned as well. She'd been dancing around and making fun of Meng Yao just a moment ago. And now Lin Yi was barging in. Most importantly, the sofa Yushu was sitting on was facing the villa's doorway, and Lin Yi could see every part of her body clearly. Ugh. Did I come back at the wrong time? Lin Yi gulped as he realized that moving his eyes away from Yushu's body was a very difficult decision, so difficult that he couldn't complete it. In actuality, Lin Yi had been drooling over Yushu for a long time, but because she was Meng Yao's best friend, Lin Yi hadn't dared to show it too much. But today, this was a golden opportunity, and it'd be a waste not to see it. Besides, Master Lin comforted himself that this was an accident, and that Yushu was the one who'd asked him to see it. Cover your eyes. You can't look? Meng Yao finally snapped back to reality and screamed, stopping Lin Yi's perverted behavior. Oh! Yushu raised her hands, and just when everyone thought that she was going to cover her chest, Yushu covered her eyes with her hands. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.